and welcome back to the Love to Mom podcast. As always, I am your host, Jerry, and I am joined by my steaming mother, Christy.
Ooh, that's an interesting word to use with this movie.
It's the hottest day of summer.
That's very true, and we heard that a few times. I have to say, your high today sounded oh shoot, it made me think a little bit of Jack Handy from Saturday Night Live. Hi, like a NPR show or something. It was very peaceful.
I was told recently that I have a good radio voice, which I did not believe.
I could see that.
But I guess, I don't know. I guess maybe you're proving that correct. But
Yes.
as the title of our podcast suggests, we are going to be covering Do the Right Thing,
Yeah.
Spike Lee joint from 1989. This was my pick, and this was one that you had not seen before. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. Now, I would be kind of interested to know, maybe we'll start with this, because you were alive when this movie came out. Do you remember
Yes.
anything about the reception at the time?
I remember it being popular, at least among younger people.
Sure.
So 1989 would have been my senior year in high school. I don't remember hearing much about Spike Lee before this movie. I feel like this is the movie that kind of that I remember hearing about first. That was his. I realize it's not his first movie, but that is the first one that I remember hearing about. I do have. Yeah, I just have so many things I want to say about this movie.
Wow.
But one of the
okay.
things I would like to say, and before we start to delve too deeply, is I watched this and I was like, oh my gosh, this, I mean, this could have been done today.
Uh-huh.
I did not know about what happens at the end of this movie.
Oh,
And I don't remember hearing anybody talking about that when back in the day. The big thing at that time, and I don't remember what year this happened, this would be something we could look up, would be when we're talking about police brutality, was Rodney King. I remember I was in college, but I don't remember what year that happened.
wasn't that in the 90s?
It might be the early 90s because, I would have been in school then.
Yeah.
But as far as police brutality and stuff, I don't really remember hearing anything about that back at this time. So I would imagine that this movie probably rattled some cages.
Yeah.
But it also depends on who was seeing this movie. I don't know who it was marketed toward, you know what I mean? So I don't really know. But wow, the ending of that was shocking to me. I was
Yes.
the tone just
Oh,
flipped
yeah.
on its head. I
Well,
loved it.
there's tension brewing throughout. And
Yes.
that's very intentional, obviously. Like one of my favorite scenes is where it's like a Spike Lee staple. One of his favorite things is having people look down the barrel of the camera and they just basically say the point of the movie to you. And there's that scene where there's 5 different characters and they're all just hurling slurs and expletives at different races of
Different
people.
groups.
And then Sam Jackson has to say, "Cool out, cut that out. That's the double truth, Ruth."
Yeah, I that scene, that collection of clips was like, wow, it really is kind of a gut punch. I have a feeling that might be a phrase I'll be using a lot as we're talking about this. It's very interesting because it had kind of a Sesame Street vibe to it, which I realize kind of sounds like a weird thing to use, but everyone was very colorful. The buildings were colorful. There was something about it that was joyful, bright and although we know it's hot and sweaty out there, it's oh, so many bright reds and yellows and all of that. So I feel like that really lent itself to the lighter tone of, especially toward the beginning of the movie, although there were times sprinkled throughout, obviously, that made you stop in your tracks.
Yeah.
but that particular scene, the collection of scenes where people were just like dropping every slur you could think of for every group, and every group had a different group that they were going after. And
Right.
wow, I mean, that was that. It felt very kind of out of. I'm going to say out of place, but not that it really was. It took you out of the flow of the movie, and I think
Yes.
that happens periodically. He'll just pull you out, and there'll be the scene, and then you'd kind of jump back in. So
Well,
yeah, I
the way that it's done is very particular. And this, I think this might help with like the out of place, and why that scene doesn't necessarily feel out of place is that it follows the scene where Mookie and Pino, who's Spike Lee and John Turturro, they have this conversation where Spike Lee's basically like, "Hey, who's your favorite basketball player? Magic Johnson. Who's your favorite movie star? Eddie Murphy. Who's your favorite rock star? It's Prince. What makes them different? You always say N-word this, N-word that, but like, why do you like all of these black stars?" And then
yeah.
he's basically just like, "Oh, well, they're different. They're not N-words. They're something more," which is kind of like, that whole thing that was kind of going on at the time and certainly before, where it was like, I'm
Yes.
sure there were, I mean, Harry Belafonte, that Banana Boat song was like
Yep.
huge in like white circles when that song came out. And I'm sure that a lot of those people that were listening to that song, like straight up were against the kind of civil rights stuff that Harry Belafonte was doing in real life. And so I think that's kind of like commentary on that. But they kind of just like leave it there, but they like, there's still that like resentment and tension that's still there. And then it starts with Spike Lee saying all those things about Italians. Then John Turturro says things about black people. And then it kind of like goes on from there, kind of showing that like, yes, this is the conflict that's going on at this specific moment, but this is a greater conversation to be made about oppression and discrimination in general. Which is why Sam Jackson just saying "cool it" at the end is just like so perfect. And maybe we should just jump in and like, I love Sam Jackson in this movie in general.
Loved it. I didn't even know he was in it, and they start the movie zoomed in on his mouth. I'm like, that voice is familiar. And as soon as they got up just a little bit further, I was like, oh my gosh, it's a really young Sam Jackson.
Yeah. So I guess maybe that's something else to talk about, is that this is a lot of people's first movies. You have Martin Lawrence. This was his first movie. Sam Jackson, I think this is very, very early. Sam Jackson was in Spike Lee's previous movie, School Days. I don't know how early that is in his filmography, but it's very early. John Turturro, this was his first major role. And now he's in Severance. And honestly, I've been watching Severance, and it is so hard. Whenever I see John Turturro in there, I picture that scene where he's like hurling all the slurs, and he's just the cutest guy in Severance. He has
Really?
Yes, he has this lovely romance with Christopher Walken, and it is so cute.
That's so weird.
I know.
I don't think I've ever seen him in anything else, which I know that that's probably unusual, maybe. But
Well-
I didn't even. I know that I recognize his name. I could not have picked him out.
Sure.
So
Yeah, he kind of plays, I guess he's known for being like bad guys. That's kind of his shtick. And he's pretty good at it. But it's nice in Severance, where it's a little turn on that, where you expect him to be this real hard ass, but eventually he softens up, and it is really cute. But yeah, this is first movie for a lot of people, put a lot of people on the map. And this is like another thing kind of going along with that, is that this is an interesting, it's like a family production. I don't know. I know you did some research about this. I don't know if you saw this, but obviously Spike Lee wrote, direct, produced, and stars in the movie, which is crazy.
it is.
His sister, Joy Lee, plays his sister in the movie.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
Oh, I
that's
love that. I liked her.
She's good. And I think
He
she's
was good. Like,
Oh.
why doesn't he star in more of his movies? He's really good.
well, he did in the beginning, at least for like the first three. I know he did. He has a supporting role in Malcolm X.
Yeah.
He plays Malcolm X's like partner in crime at like the beginning of that movie. I don't know. I think he is the best actor of like a director. A director who acts in their own things, he's the best.
Well, and that's a lot. I mean, that's probably why it's like, oh my gosh, you're already directing, you've already written it,
Yeah.
and then to star probably feels like a lot.
Oh yeah.
I'm guessing. I mean, I obviously don't know that, but he was very good.
He's very good. Yeah. But more familial stuff. The composer of the movie is David Lee, and that's Spike Lee's dad. And oh geez, my dog is going crazy. I don't know what's going on. Hey Edna, get over here. She'll be fine. But well, now I can't find it. But one of the cinematographers is Spike Lee's brother.
Wow.
So this is a whole kind of family affair.
Yeah.
And that guy, who's Spike Lee's brother, went on to work and do like Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind. Like, went on to do like he had his own kind of career of like working
Wow.
in the camera department. So it's kind of interesting that there's this family unit. And something I learned when I watched the commentary track is that Spike Lee is the oldest of 6.
Whoa.
So they have like a really big family. And I thought it was funny that like a bunch of them they all work together, at least in this early part of Spike Lee's career.
Yeah.
And so I think that really goes to work towards this like community, that this really does feel like a community that's lived in. All these people know each other. They've grown up together. That's something that Sal says, is that like, I've seen these kids grow up and I've seen them. I've been here for 20 years. And like, you feel that in just how everyone's acting, and like the great casting and everything. It's just perfect. It's a perfectly set movie, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I loved that it was all on one street
Yeah.
because I don't know, there's just something that made it feel kind of Sesame Streety to me too. Is you've got the bright colors, you've got everybody knows everybody, people are looking out for each other, everybody knows DeMayer, and
And
like
mother, sister. Yeah.
mother, sister, they take care of each other. Even like the young people were kind to him. There were some people that weren't.
Ahmad
but-
was not.
No, but for the most part, people, they were just
Yeah.
looking out for each other, and they just accepted that that's who he was, and that was nice.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
like when he saves that kid from being hit by a car, like he obviously is invested enough to risk his own life to do that.
Yeah.
So this is just a really tight knit, wonderful little community.
Yeah.
I really liked that.
Well, speaking of the mayor, this is a reprise because last week we did Grumpy Old
Yes.
Men.
Yeah.
And Ossie Davis was in that. You did a whole breakdown on Ossie Davis and all of his life accomplishments, and specifically like working with Malcolm X, which obviously is a pretty, it's an interesting connection that Spike was working with Ossie Davis so early in his career and then went on to make probably the Malcolm X biopic. I don't think anyone else is going to take a swing at it. Or at least nobody should.
It's hard to do better than Denzel Washington.
No.
He's
Yeah.
pretty stellar. I enjoyed seeing Ossie. His part in this was a lot bigger, and he was just wonderful.
He's so
I mean, he was wonderful, and that was a complex character. So here's something that I didn't know if you knew, is that Mother's sister is his wife. That's Ruby Dee.
I didn't know that they were married. That's interesting.
Yeah, they're married. So I'm going to do just a very quickly, like a little deep dive on Ruby Dee.
Okay.
Just because we're talking about her. So I knew going into this that was his wife. So it was kind of fun to watch their interactions with each other. having that in context. So I did just a bit of a dive on her because I thought, well, so last time we were talking, I thought she was a singer, but she is not a singer. She is, where are you, Ruby? One moment, please. Hold. Oh, I see. I started a new page. I couldn't find it because I wasn't scrolling far enough. Okay, Ruby Dee. She and Ossie Davis were married for 57 years, and that was through his death. So he died first. She is an actress, a poet, a playwright, a screenwriter, a journalist, and as we know from last time, she's a civil rights activist.
Yeah.
She was known for Raisin in the Sun, American Gangster. She was nominated for a Best Supporting Actress Oscar when she was 85 years old for the role that she played in American Gangster.
Wow. Isn't that
Yeah.
with Denzel?
I don't know. Is that a Spike Lee movie?
I don't think so. You can keep going. I would just want to double check.
I can't remember now. I'm second guessing myself.
It's Denzel. It's Ridley
Oh,
Scott.
it is. Ridley Scott. Okay. Yes. Okay. She appeared in, just as a side note, because you were talking about Sidney Poitier the other day on your other podcast.
Yeah.
She appeared in 4 films with him, and she appeared in 9 films with Ossie. So they worked together a lot.
Oh, sure.
So these are some interesting like career sort of awards that they won. What's interesting is all 3 of these that I'm going to talk about very briefly, she won with Ossie. So it was almost like they were a pair. In 1989, they were voted into the NAACP Image Award Hall of Fame together. 1989, so same year this came out.
Yeah.
In 1995, she and Ossie Davis were awarded the American National Medal of the Arts.
Wow.
And in 2004, they were nominated, or they received the award for the Kennedy Center Honor. So those are 3 gigantic awards that I just thought it was really fun that they awarded those to them together.
Yeah.
So I just find it very. I like the connections. Like I'm finding the connections very interesting, where we're talking about Ossie because of Grumpy Old Men, and that brings back Harry Belafonte. We talked about him a couple weeks ago, and now we're talking about Ruby Dee and the her relationship with Ossie, and then you find out these 2 worked together forever, and they were so active with the NAACP and stuff. It just is. I don't know. I can do so many deep dives on that kind of stuff. I just find it endlessly fascinating the way people are connected with each other through art, but also like in real life. I just enjoy that so much.
And Spike Lee is perfect for that because he really does a good job of like, I don't know how he knows the people that he knows. Like, how did he meet Ossie Davis, and Ruby Dee, these like civil rights leaders? And like, this was his 3rd movie. Did they see She's Gotta Have It and was like, I need to be in that kid's movies? Like, I don't know. That feels like a weird one to see and be like, that kid's going somewhere.
Yeah.
Not that it's a bad one, but I think that movie is more overtly like a comedy, like a sexy comedy.
I feel like there were so few Black directors that I would think that he probably made a big splash. Maybe not amongst all people, but I would guess in the Black community, it would be a big deal when you have somebody, making bigger films that's a Black director. They would, maybe try to get in touch. But that also brings up something else, because I did another deep dive on somebody that has to do with that specific situation. So I'm going to talk for a second about, here's the problem. I don't know how to pronounce the middle name on it. The guy who played Smiley.
I don't know his name.
Roger Guenveur Smith. I don't know how to say the middle name, or the middle name. Not necessarily his middle name, but the name that's in the middle.
I gotcha.
Roger Guenveur Smith, the guy who plays Smiley. So he went to Yale School of Drama. He this dude is brilliant and ended up getting advanced degrees in history. He's very, very bright. And he went to Yale not for drama, but he just tried out on a lark while he was there and ended up getting into the Yale School of Drama. He was there with Angela Bassett and with John Turturro.
Oh, interesting.
I know, right? I thought that was interesting too. So this little tidbit I found, it said that he had seen She's Gotta Have It, which was back in 1986, in the theaters twice. He said, I saw it twice in a row.
No.
And then he tried to contact Spike Lee and was able to get an open audition, and then landed his first role in film was School Days, which was 1988.
One that came out right before this.
Yes. And he has been in 13 Spike Lee films.
Wow.
He holds the record. Yeah.
Huh.
The role of Smiley was completely improvised.
Yes.
So he's like, if you went to look at the script for this movie, you would not see Smiley in there at all. That's something that they had met each other, and they it sounded like he had said to Spike Lee, like, this is this history that I've put together for this person. And Spike was like, go for it.
Yeah.
So, so he did that. And then he, just as a side note, he also did a play. So this guy wrote a play called A Huey P. Newton Story, which he played in Harlem. So it's an off-Broadway show. He ended up winning. So Huey P. Newton is the founder of the Black Panthers. So he wrote a one-man show about the founder of the Black Panthers and played it in Harlem. And he ended up winning an Obie Award for that, which is an off-Broadway award, which we have talked about before as well. Yeah. And he also won 3 NAACP awards for that particular play. And then Spike Lee, he partnered with Spike Lee on it to make a TV movie of the same name. And Spike Lee directed it, and that was nominated for 2 NAACP awards and won a Peabody Award for excellence.
Wow.
Yeah. And so they collaborate a lot. The two of them are very close and have continued close collaboration. And if you go out and look at his IMDb, my goodness, he is so prolific.
Yeah.
He is in everything. I was just really impressed by him. There's a fantastic interview that's like 4 minutes long on YouTube. That is him talking about his experience on Do the Right Thing and on working with Spike specifically on that play. So I'll send that link to you so you can do with it what you will. But it was really fun to just see this interview with him.
Interesting.
And talk about his relationship with Spike and how they work together. So
wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is something that Spike mentioned in the commentary track was that Smiley character was completely improvised. And what's interesting is that everything that character did was improvised. Like there's the scene where Sal and Pino are like having that conversation where Pino says, I don't want to work here. There's too many black people. And that's when Sal's like, I saw them grow up. That scene, that was all scripted.
Where they're by the window?
Yeah.
Okay.
Up until Smiley like wants that picture. And that's like an important scene.
Huge.
And that was all improvised. John Turturro was not supposed to go outside. They were marked for that specific shot to work. And it's a long shot. And that's something that I didn't notice until the second go around is that Spike Lee, there's like 2 or 3 really, really long shots. And I'll get to one right after this, but that's like one of the big reasons for what happens at the end is John Turturro telling Smiley off. And it leads to like maybe one of the most important shots in the movie period, where after the pizzeria is burned down, he hangs up the picture of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. The last shot before the epilogue is Smiley looking at that picture and smiling, and then it cuts to black. And that's absolutely crazy that none of this was thought of before they shot the thing. It's absolutely nuts.
It is. And I think when I went out and watched that interview and I saw him, I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen him in a million things. I did not recognize him from like until I went out and watched that interview, I was like, "Oh, yes, of course. I mean, I know this guy. He was in a different world when I was watching that.
Oh,
He had a
sure.
recurring role on Different World." But yeah, I mean, I just there were so many things in this, and it's exactly what you're talking about that are just so brilliant. I think Danny cannot. I don't remember how you say his name. Sal.
Oh, the guy. Yeah, yeah,
So the scene you're talking about where you can see the despair on his face when he goes outside to
yeah.
confront Smiley and he's like, leave him alone, man. Like, and you can
He has
see
his like
just
face
like,
covered.
what did I do? Yeah. What in the world?
Yeah,
It's just the disappointment, the despair, the like, you know, but then the next scene, he would be doing something and being a jerk. And I'm like, I
yeah,
can't figure this character out because in so many ways, he does care about that community. We see it. We see it all the time. And then we see him be a total jerk to Mookie and throw
yeah,
money at him. And then we see, you know, something else that he does that's nice. And then the next time and I'm like, I can't figure you out, my friend. I can't figure you out because I want I want consistency. I want you to be good here and I want you to be good all the way through, but that's not what we get. And honestly, people aren't like that.
yeah.
That's not reality. I just felt like sometimes where we're saying, you know, he's really invested in the neighborhood, he's defending people to his kids, or specifically to Pino. And then the next scene, he's like railing on somebody or saying something that's just really
Yeah.
unkind. And I just could not. It just felt so. It felt like it was swinging back and forth with him, and so you never felt like you were on safe footing, which also might be part of the point
Yes. I
that
mean,
you don't feel like you're on safe footing.
that was what was interesting listening to the commentary track because
Mm-hmm.
I was really interested on what Spike Lee would say about Sal's characterization and that like he's wildly inconsistent. And
Mm-hmm.
that's maybe like one of my favorite, it's like a subtle character thing that I think Spike Lee did. And this is something that he doesn't bring up in the commentary track. I
Mm-hmm.
was very disappointed. But uh, he was, the way I see it is Sal is very kind and empathetic and an open-minded person when he's talking to his kids or when he's talking to Mookie.
Mm-hmm.
So like behind closed doors, he's a nice guy, but he doesn't necessarily practice what he preaches.
Mm-hmm.
Where he's like, no, these people, they're like my kids. And then when Radio Raheem
Mm-hmm.
comes in, he's like, turn that jungle music off. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's not what someone who like apparently like loves this community would say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's a big like, ooh, he's a walking contradiction in that
Mm-hmm.
like he says he's not racist and he'll say that to people, you know, if they're not messing with him, but as soon as like someone mildly irritates him, then he grabs the baseball bat and is like, get out of my store.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's Sal's like a very, very interesting character in that way,
Yeah.
where I feel
He's
like
tricky.
most people are pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Um, except for maybe Vito, the younger brother.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of in this interesting space where he's friends with Mookie and he seems to be friends with a lot of the people in the community. But he's also Sal's son and
Mm-hmm.
Pino's brother. And so when that, you know, when the restaurant's burning down at the end, he's just standing there with his family
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, well, now he really doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere because
Mm-hmm.
he was kind of basically not really a part of what his family was going on. And he was like more a part of like Mookie's community because they were close friends. And I think that's a really interesting angle to it too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that Italian family is like the linchpin of this entire film.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that each one of them is like perfectly characterized and that they're all very, very distinct. It doesn't feel like the Italian family, all of them act the same way because they're this like substitute for like these cliches or certain tropes that we come to expect from New York Italian families. It's like that's not really the case. They're not really a solid family unit in the way that like the Corleones from The Godfather are or something, where it's like you don't you act out of the family, then you're out of the family, and we're gonna kill you. There really isn't that, which is really
Yeah.
interesting. This is like more of like a real family, not a movie family.
Hmm. Yeah, and that relationship between the brothers, I thought was like he just kept letting him beat the crap out of him. I'm like, what are you doing, friend? And Mookie's like, stop. Like, you just need to hit him.
Yeah,
You have to set a boundary, which I think is interesting too, because that's like, okay, you're going to set a boundary, you're going to set a precedent that you can't do this. And I think in some ways that's what Sal was trying to do in the restaurant, was like, well, I have to set a boundary. I can't let everyone come in with this, or, and so I think about that when it comes to library stuff too. Like, I want the teens there. I love them, but you can't come in and, be yelling with your friends in the computer lab and disrupting other people. And so I have to set a boundary, right?
Sure.
Now, Sal did not set a very good boundary. Sal was unkind. Like, there's a difference between setting a boundary with kindness versus being a racist bigot and being mean, which is what Sal did.
Mhm.
And I also, the scene where Mookie's sister comes in,
Oh
and
yeah.
he's like, that made me incredibly uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And then when Mookie pulls her aside and she's like,
No, it's just Sal.
it's fine. He's just being nice. And I'm like, ooh, he gave me the heebie-jeebies in
Mhm.
that scene. That was not,
Yeah.
ooh, I didn't like that at all. um, it just was so creepy to me, the way
Yeah.
he was talking to her and the way he was looking at her. Yeah, this movie was just so complicated. It was like there would be some little nuance, something that would be like ring, 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 bells, 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 and then back to normal again. And then
Yes.
one other. It felt like we never really delved into these things, that it's like he would bring them to your site and then we would move on.
Yeah.
But we never really talked about it. We never addressed it. It
Mm.
was just like, these little drops of racist things throughout
Yeah.
until it culminates at the end. So there were so many times where I was like, oh, I want you to spend just a little more time on that. Like, but it was so quick and so subtle so many times that
Yeah.
because there were so many characters and we were looking at so many different groups of people who all had different dynamics, and like those three older guys sitting in front of that red
They're the
wall,
best.
I loved them. And even between them, they were like, well, you're an immigrant and you're like they were kind of picking on each other and
Yeah.
everything, but they were so chill through the movie. And then at the end, it was like, wow, I don't know, it just kind of caught me off guard to see these guys that were just hanging out all day laughing and whatever. But that's also good to see, just like everyday life,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
that what we're going to see on the news is the building burning
Yes.
and people, what they would consider like a mob or something.
Mhm.
That's what we see. And so that's what everyone thinks. I mean, I'm generalizing here, obviously, very much,
Sure.
but we were able to see them all day long and hanging out with their friends and walking in the neighborhood, playing in the fire hydrant, and like
Yeah.
flooding that guy's car, which was awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we're seeing their everyday life, and then you see when circumstances, they've just hit their limit,
Mhm.
and what happens. And that wouldn't matter if it was white people, black people, whoever. Like, that is true of every community. There
Yeah.
comes a point where you break. And unfortunately, that's the time that we see those communities on the news, is only during those times when it's when things have boiled over,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
really unfortunate.
I mean, that's the whole thing that was kind of going on in the aftermath of like the 2020 Black Lives Matter stuff, where
Yep.
it was like there was like galvanized race tensions because all of the major news was like, oh, all these black people are burning their cities down. How could
Mhm.
they act like that? Those savages. They weren't like explicitly saying that, but I mean,
that was,
I
yeah,
mean, that's what they were saying.
sure. Yep.
And so like, yeah, if it's exactly what you're saying, like and they even say that at the end. Mr. Senior Love Daddy says that at the end, where he's like, the mayor is coming down this afternoon. Maybe he can get
Yes.
together with our own da mayor. Try to figure this out. And it's like, yeah, because the mayor wasn't there when all
Yeah.
this happened. The mayor wasn't there that day. The mayor just showed up because, there was an incident. Someone died.
Yeah.
I should make a statement so that I look good. It's very
opportunity.
political and stuff like that. Which apparently was like a real dig. I thought that was funny. Spike Lee was like, yeah, because Sam Jackson said, oh, by the way, this is a reminder to all of you to register to vote, to VOTE. And,
I wrote that down because I loved that.
and Spike Lee was like, yeah, the mayor of New York at the time was a raging asshole and we wanted to get rid of him. So like this was like him trying to actually remind people in his community to vote.
To vote. I loved that.
I'm like, that's awesome. I love that
I
they
loved
snuck that in.
It was so like it stood on its own too, which I loved.
yeah.
It was very for some reason it stood out in that scene. All of that dialogue, that part, it was like this little snip that
yeah.
it seemed like they kept separate from the rest that would really resonate. You're not gonna miss it. We're gonna like pause for a second and then we're gonna move on. Yes.
Yeah, because I didn't know that was real until this time around when I watched the commentary track, and I'm like, that's awesome that it's also like kind of a dig at a real politician that Spike Lee had an issue with.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I love that, and it perfectly encapsulates all these political things that we've been seeing now. But what's interesting, talking a little bit about this commentary track that I listened to, it was a commentary track recorded for the original, I guess I should say, I have the Criterion release here.
Oh, that's pretty.
Oh yeah, it's
It
very
looks like
nice.
that wall. That red on that wall. So gorgeous.
Which apparently, like, what was it? I think the mural that's behind the pizza place is real. Like, that was there. But I think they did have to paint the wall. And, like, the production designer was just like, hey, what color do you want it? And Spike Lee's like, I don't know. He's like, okay, I'm just going to paint it red then. And,
I
like,
love that red.
that's, like, the most iconic thing from this movie is that red wall and those three guys sitting in front of it. But this commentary track, it was Spike Lee, it was the cinematographer, I think Ernest Dickerson, production designer Wynn Thomas, and then Joy Lee, Spike Lee's sister. And that was kind of interesting. In that, like, they were talking a lot about the initial response. And specifically at the end, and this is what I thought was interesting because this is not part of the conversation anymore, and I think there's probably a reason for that. But when this movie came out, there was apparently a big pushback to, like, a lot of people were siding on Sal's side, saying that, like, they shouldn't have destroyed his business. Yes, it's bad that someone died, but this was, like, a step too far. And so, like, a lot of the people in this commentary track were, like, having to defend that decision to have this big riot at the end and eventually burn down the pizza place. And I was just like, that's nuts. That was, like, such a big part of the conversation. And, like, they don't even bring up Radio Raheem, which I know we have not brought up Radio Raheem, but I think he deserves his own, like, part of the podcast.
I agree. I agree.
So we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was almost, like, really shocking. Because I'm like, who is dwelling on that part of it? Where it's
Well-
like, yes, it's the big climax. It's the, it's, I guess, the main action of the movie. It's what you'll probably remember. I mean, honestly, like, the first time I saw it, I was like, what even happened for the first two acts of this movie? Just the end was, like, ingrained in my mind forever. And so, like, that's what you're walking away from, and I get that, but it's just like, man, like how do you not feel as angry as those people do when you see Radio Raheem get choked out the way that he does? And how that like echoes like so many cases of police brutality that we've seen. And maybe this is going along with what you're saying, is that maybe people outside of those circles, maybe they just didn't know. And so like they're like, the business is
Yeah.
the issue here.
Well, I think the whole thing, and we can look as in as recent history as George Floyd. We're talking about 2020, like that is what everyone was talking about, was the
True.
riots and the thing, the businesses burning in Minneapolis. Like
Yeah.
people were having a cow about it, and that was a huge part of the conversation. Why are they destroying their own neighborhoods? If they,
Yeah.
if they were upset about that, it just doesn't make sense. They're just hurting themselves, and I'm like, well, when you watch this, I mean, it was such an echo. I mean, that
Yes.
part was, I was like, oh my gosh, like it was so shocking to me that, first of all, that it took that turn because I didn't know anything about this.
Oh yeah.
But also to be like, oh my gosh, this could have been the George Floyd situation. This is the George Floyd, like to a T.
Yeah.
The response by the community, granted, it was contained into this small area, but that was a huge part of the conversation at that time. Man,
Yeah.
people talked about that all the time. They're just destroying their own communities. Why would you do that? Well, and the thing is like, Mookie is the one who threw the garbage can through.
Yeah.
Like he has the closest relationship with that family. Of everyone standing there, he knows them the best. He works with them. And he's the one that throws the garbage can. And it's like, I don't know. I just don't think there's any way, as the majority race and culture in our country, we can truly understand what it's like to be marginalized in every aspect of life, and then to have something like this happen and to have it be completely disregarded. I don't think that we can truly understand what that is. And I think it's really easy for white people to be like, well, that just doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, you know what? Sometimes things don't make sense.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes they just don't. Like you have feelings and emotions. You're not just a brain. You also have been dealing with oppression for your whole life.
Yeah.
And something like this happens in front of your eyes and you think you're not going to do anything. Like it just doesn't even make sense. And they set fire to the business of the person who was responsible.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
like the fact that that's even a conversation, especially in this particular case where it's so contained,
yes.
I'm like, that shouldn't even be a conversation.
Yeah. And
In
that
my
was
opinion.
that was something that Spike Lee was very vocal about, as you can probably imagine.
Yeah.
Because he is, I just love him so much. He is not
Yeah, it's
afraid
awesome.
to combat what he views as like racist reviews of his stuff. And something else that he thought was like a misrepresentation, and I can't believe that people actually told him this, is that he was like, yeah, people would come up to me and say that it was a great movie, a great representation of like what it's really like to live in a black community, but where's all the drugs? That was actually something that he had to say in this thing. Was he was like, why? Like, why is that so necessary to like represent the black community? And it's like true, in the 80s there was like a big like the crack epidemic
Yeah.
was going on. And so like I kind of understand that viewpoint, but also the fact that some people were just like, this isn't black enough because there's no drugs in it is absolutely insane.
Yeah. Well, you have to think about the messaging of the time, too. This is exactly what you're talking about. This is the height of the Say No to Drugs campaign. Got Reagan in office, and that was the big focus. And they're, highlighting the drug problem in black communities, which, there's the whole thing about like our government was not helping and was probably hurting that situation, like shipping them into those communities. And so that is what, as a white American, that's the narrative we were told,
Yeah.
that this is it's a black problem. So you can't have a black movie without drugs, because that's the reality of life. Gangs and drugs. That was everything at that time. So to have a movie with real black joy, which I loved,
Yes.
I think I would have really loved this movie if I'd have seen it when I was younger, because I feel like today we have access to so many more voices than we did at that time. And I mean, I remember watching the Malcolm X movie on campus at Wartburg. They were doing a screening on campus, and that was my first Spike Lee movie that I had seen. But I just feel like those narratives were all we were hearing. We weren't hearing anything that was joyful or seeing much that was joyful, unless it was a different world. But then people would see that, they'd be like, well, that's not real.
Sure.
You know, I mean, there's a breadth of experience in every race. Every people group, there's a breadth of experience. You can't generalize an experience to an entire people group. There are people who are wealthy. There are people who are not. There are people who have addiction problems, and there are people who are not.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking and hearing at the time where like the worst drug problem in our city was in the suburbs.
Right.
And
yeah.
nobody talked about that. Nobody talked about the fact that it's the white rich kids in the suburbs that are using more substances than the kids, who are the black kids. But that's not, we're not going to talk about that, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm getting a little riled up about this a little bit, but it is.
Well, I mean, that's what the movie is.
It is. It is. And sometimes I struggle with that because I'm a white person. So I don't want to say anything I don't want to generalize. I don't want to say anything that's offensive to people. So but I'm also trying to think, well, one of the things that he did so beautifully, I felt, is that he wasn't really spoon feeding it to you.
No.
And that as a white person watching it, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing, oh gosh, yeah, like things that we understand now, microaggressions and things like that, I would have had zero idea about 30 years ago or 25 years ago, whenever.
Right.
What would that be? 35 years ago. Oh boy. I mean, this is an old movie, 35 years ago. I liked that it showed, even like when Radio Raheem goes into the Korean store and he is like, double check the expiration dates on those batteries. And they're, it just is like, and that isn't it just the truth of it? The human experience that we are always othering someone, right? And I appreciated that because it would be easy to be like, well, we're on the receiving end of this, but we don't pass that along. But that's a human experience, unfortunately. It's part of being human is, othering people, making assumptions of people. And what are we basing those assumptions on? And is it a lived experience? Is it something we've heard in the culture? Is it something, whatever? I just think it's, it was just, I just really thought a lot about this movie. I really, really liked it. I really did.
Yeah, it's a very special film, I think.
It really is.
But speaking of Radio Raheem, let's talk about him.
Let's talk about Radio Raheem.
Radio Raheem is, I was going to say he's my favorite character, but I love Bugging Out. I can't help myself. I love Giancarlo Esposito as Bugging Out.
I've never seen him in anything else. What's he from? What would I know him from?
Most people know him from Breaking Bad. He plays like the main bad guy in Breaking Bad. And this is my PSA. Giancarlo, if you somehow watch this podcast, get back to doing funny stuff like this. You are so dang good at it. He is stuck in like a villain typecast ever since Breaking Bad. And I think it's because he was in these early Spike Lee movies. Like he was in School Days and this, and he was in Malcolm X. And he's always playing these like little funny bit parts. And then like he was basically unseen. I think he had like a small role in The Usual Suspects, but then from then until Breaking Bad, he wasn't really in anything. And now that's what everybody knows him as. Everyone knows him as Gus from Breaking Bad, who's like this. He owns the chicken restaurant, so like he has to be like this really nice kind of nice community focused CEO guy, but he's also this like drug kingpin that's distributing meth. And it's like one of my favorite performances of all time. But
Yeah.
after that, he was cast in The Boys, and he plays the CEO of the evil corporation, and he's doing the same thing. And he was recently in like one of the new Far Cry games, and he's doing the same thing. He's playing this boss that is like super evil. And I'm like, come on, you're so dang funny and do the right thing. It is one of my favorite performances. But we're talking about Radio Raheem. And he has so much aura. It's awesome. I love that everybody in this movie is just like, don't mess with Radio. It's his street and we're just living on it.
Yeah. Yeah. He's so quiet. It's not like he had a lot of lines. It's his presence.
Yes.
His presence.
And he's always playing Fight the Power by Public Enemy,
I know.
which I think I saw somewhere that it's played like 13 times throughout the movie. Obviously, it's the title sequence, which maybe we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yes, I would like to do that.
But
I
it's
do have
also,
things to say about
I'm
that.
sure you do, and I do too. But it's always that one Public Enemy song, and I think that's so interesting a decision. And that like Public Enemy has made so many songs where it's just like, why didn't you just like do the whole, what is it, Attack from, I know the, frick, I do not listen to Public Enemy, I'm sorry. But like, why didn't they just do more of their songs? Because all of their songs kind of have this like energy to it, where they're a very, very socially conscious group. Their album, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. They cited Marvin Gaye's What's Going On as being a direct reference, as like, we want to make this very socially charged album. I think Fight the Power is on Fear of a Black Planet. And that whole album is, and It Takes a Nation of Millions are both like so packed with like really, really great socially conscious rap songs. Why is it just Fight the Power? And I'm like, it's brilliant in that this movie is all about tension. It's all about conflict. And so they don't use Public Enemy songs that are like calling out different like aspects of racism or stuff like that. It's all about fight the power. And that's eventually what happens at the end, right? They're trying to fight the power as best that they can, because they can't actually assault the police officers that actually killed Radio Raheem. They have to do it in the only way that they can. They can express those feelings the only way they can. And it's like DeMayer says in the beginning, you got to do the right thing. Which is actually taken from a Malcolm X quote. And that's why the movie is called that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think the quote is just like, you've always got to do the right thing. And so he just took the end of it and made it the movie. But Radio Raheem is always playing that one Public Enemy song.
Yep.
And it's funny that like the guys in front of the red wall are like, turn that off, play some old jazz.
Yes.
And even bugging out, like right before they go into Sal's, is like, don't you have any other music? Like, why is it always Public Enemy? And I just think that's so funny that like, no one else really, he doesn't really pay him any mind. He's just like, I'm doing my own thing. I love Public Enemy. I love this one specific Public Enemy song, and I'm going to listen to it on repeat all day. And I don't really care what anyone says. And I love that. And I love that, like, everybody who sees him, they, like, give him the utmost respect. Even Senior Mr. Love Daddy gives him or Mr. Senior Love Daddy gives him a shout out at the beginning. And he's like, hey, Radio Raheem. He even walks in stereo.
Yeah, I liked the way they had Sam Jackson kind of narrating parts of it. It was very enjoyable.
Yeah.
And brought what was happening outside that window. Like he's right there that
Yes.
same night when there's the
Yeah.
riot too. He's sitting right there.
They shoot water at his window with the hose.
Yes.
And that's really funny too, is that Sam Jackson was actually just there for like most of the time that they were shooting. If you watch, there's stuff like he's like acting and being like you can see that he's like engaging and like being a part of it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite instances of something like that, and this is like, I don't think it's like super hidden, but it took me a long time to see it. It might have only been on this go around, where Mookie and Vito accompanies him on a delivery because Mookie is delivering to Mr. Senior Love Daddy, and they have that conversation right in front of his window, and he's like, hey, you're standing outside my window with my food. Come on, get in here. And you can see that he's like screaming. And he's like, get in here. And it's just so funny. And then he eventually comes in and he's like, my stomach has been grumbling all day, but my main man Mookie is here to save the day.
Which I love that. I love this whole, like, everybody listening to the radio is knowing what's happening on that street.
Oh, yeah.
He's watching what's happening on that street. He's narrating what's happening on the street. You don't even have to be on the street to hear and know
No.
what's happening on the street. This local radio station is just like, oh, I loved that. We lost our Radio Raheem situation.
Oh, sorry.
No,
on a
no,
tangent.
it's okay. I think I derailed it, but I really love that character, and I love that he's part of that setting. That this giant picture window, and under his window is lit up love.
Yeah.
And
We love
there's so many
radio.
things like that in there. It was like, oh, but that sign under there, after that riot happens, it's nighttime, and so everything is dark, but that sign is lit up underneath.
Oh, I didn't
And
even
I was like,
notice that.
wow, that's. And then there was a line that we'll get back to Radio Raheem. There was a line at the end that I actually wrote down that he says,
That Sam Jackson says?
yes. He says, are we going to live together? Together, are we going to live?
Yeah.
I wrote that down because I was like, oh man, like,
the
and that
triple
was,
truth
I
of-
think it was the same scene where we really noticed that love sign lit up. I think you could see it during the day, but at night it just really,
I didn't even catch that he had a love sign. That's perfect.
yeah,
That's
it
like-
was cool.
That's like one of my, and I don't know how I missed this, but for some reason, I didn't notice until this last time I watched it that Mookie says hate as he's throwing the trash can at the window. And so I'm like, oh, that's perfect because, he gets that speech from Radio Raheem where he has the two knuckle
Yes.
dusters that are love and hate.
Yes. I wrote that down too.
And so he throws the trash can and says, hate, but Mr. Love Daddy is love. And so there's that balance. They're right next to each other. The two buildings are right there. And love and hate are right next to each other, just like they are on Radio Raheem's fists. That's
right.
crazy. I didn't
Yes.
notice that. Wow.
Yes, that is interesting. Yeah, that whole speech that Radio Raheem gives about that,
perfect.
he says, love's on his right hand, and the left hand is hate. And he was talking about, punching with that left hand, and then the quote that I wrote down is, "If I love you, I love you, and if I hate you," and then it's like he pauses, and Mookie jumps in and says, "There it is, love and hate."
Yeah.
And he's talking about like, he was putting his hands together and saying like there's static. Static is the word he used when he laced his fingers together and those two rings are next to each other. And he's like, that's the history of the world is love and hate next to each other. And that static that happens between the two.
Yeah.
I mean, it
It's-
was so powerful, but
Yes.
he just didn't say much. So when he's standing and having this conversation, it was like, wow, he is a deep thinker, obviously, and had an interesting an interesting perspective, but he didn't really share that very openly. It felt like he kind of let his music speak for him. That was kind of his way of expressing himself because there were not a whole lot of words coming out of his mouth, really. I don't feel like.
No. But
Yeah.
that was something that's kind of special about that character is that he is really quiet, but you can tell that he is still a part of the community and still
Mm,
proud to be a part of that community. And
yeah.
that, he's blasting the public enemy. He's got those like knuckle dusters, which was like a
Yeah.
real thing. That
Hmm.
was something that Spike Lee said. He was like, during this time, teenagers were actually wearing this. I can't
Hmm.
imagine. Like, that seems so out of the ordinary right now. But, he's like representing those like fashion trends, but he's also wearing a Bed-Stuy tank top, which is the
Mm,
neighborhood that this movie
mm,
takes place in.
hmm.
So he's repping his community.
Yeah.
He's a part of it, and if push comes to shove, he knows his stuff, and he's willing to fight for it,
Right.
which is just really admirable.
Yeah. The other thing I think is interesting. So I'm just kind of, I've got my notes in front of me here. And I had something written down about the fact that Bugging Out was trying to like get people to boycott. Nobody was going to do it. Like
Yeah,
nobody, they're just kind of like blowing him off until he goes and talks to Radio Raheem.
your back is
Jade comes
got.
out and says, "You need to find something better to do for your community." Basically,
Yeah,
like
which
there are
I
bigger things to be dealing with.
which I think that's the right take, honestly.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
I think that like, and this is maybe like something that maybe is like a coincidence because I don't think this was necessarily a thing back then. But it
Mhm.
goes to show like there's so many like so-called activists that will like really stick their foot down and be like, we need
Mm.
to. The biggest issue facing the black community is this one episode of Community that came out 15 years ago where
Yeah.
Ken Jeong plays a dark elf and it's like very clearly a joke. He's not actually in blackface, but he's like two in
Mhm.
it. That's the biggest issue facing the black community, and
Yeah.
I'm going to do petitions and send letters to the executives. And it's like this just feels like performative activism.
Mhm.
Um, but like I don't think that Bugging Out really represents that in any other sense. It's just in this one instance where he's like, I really want black people on the wall. But
Yeah.
otherwise, like when his Jordans get scuffed in the funniest scene in the movie,
I love that.
the dude's wearing
I
a
love
Larry
that.
Bird jersey, of course. And
Oh, yeah, great statement on gentrification. Like, what are you doing down here? Why do you want to live in a black neighborhood?
I was
Like,
born in Brooklyn. Oh, come
it was
on.
great. It's great.
But
I
like
think,
in that moment,
yeah.
he's like, "I'm a righteous black man, and luckily for you, I wouldn't. If I wasn't righteous, I would strike you down where you stood, or something like that." And so, like in
Yes.
every other aspect, he does seem to be like representing those values of like
Hmm.
Malcolm X or Martin Luther King. But it's just funny that he gets like so hyper fixated on this issue. And it's like, man, this really isn't productive. I think what Jade
Hmm.
says to him in that is like, if you put your energy to something more useful, then like like because that's something she says. I'm
Yeah,
not for this boycott. I'm for doing something positive for this community.
that's right.
And I'm like, that's a thesis statement in and of itself for like a
Yeah,
different
it's
movie.
good. It's good. But I think the other part is like, we also can't dispute the importance of representation.
Sure.
And
Yeah, yeah.
so, but also understanding that this is an Italian American family. They are proud of their heritage. So just there
Well,
are
yeah.
times when it's like, this is worth fighting for. For example, the Smithsonian. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even though they're taking those things away, which infuriates me to no end, like when we're talking about a place that should be representing all of American history,
Yes.
people groups should not be erased. They need to be represented.
Yes.
And so, in that context, yes, when we're looking at when we're looking at this family who's an Italian American family and it's an Italian restaurant and it makes sense, that's fine.
For sure.
But also, well, and Sal's point was like, it's my business. I
Yeah.
don't want to hang, which, I kind of go back and forth on it a little bit, honestly, because I can kind of see Bugging Out's point but not in that context.
Yeah.
And maybe it is just a situation where it's like, I'm not seeing myself anywhere. And so,
Right.
I mean, we spend all of our money here. Can't even acknowledge the fact that we contribute to So it
Yeah.
could just be something happening on the inside. Obviously, it is something happening
Well,
on the
there,
inside of Bugging Out.
there's another layer to that too. In that, did you notice that one of the faces that they showed at the end was not Italian? Unless John Travolta is secretly Italian.
Oh, he's Italian.
He is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. I think like some of the faces that were on the wall weren't necessarily Italians. I think they were just like generally, it was all white people.
Well, I mean, I saw De Niro, I saw Pacino, I
Yeah,
saw
they-
Sinatra.
They did that like, and I saw that Spike Lee actually had to, because the next movie, Jungle Fever, like heavily features Sinatra. And Spike Lee had to apologize to, I think, Nancy and be like, hey,
Really?
I didn't mean for like to like have him be this like idea of evil Italians taking over Brooklyn. And she was fine with it. But he was like, I wanted to make sure that she was cool with it before I
Yeah.
used his music.
Oh my gosh.
And something else, sorry to derail.
No,
but
perfect.
De Niro was actually going to, or was offered to play Sal.
Oh, really?
And turned it down, yeah.
That would have been interesting.
He said, there's a couple of interesting castings that you might be interested in. And that
Well, of course.
Lawrence Fishburne would have played Radio Raheem. He turned it down.
Oh, wow.
But Lawrence Fishburne was in She's Gotta Have It and School Days, I think. So they had that relationship.
Okay.
I don't know why he turned it down. De Niro said it was too similar to other roles that he had done, which I honestly don't get that because
I'm not well versed on De Niro, but that doesn't feel like that's the case.
no, but because he's played like so many mobsters, I always associate him as like young Don Corleone in Godfather 2 or Goodfellas
Yeah.
or Casino or even something like Jackie Brown. He's like always playing these like mobsters. An Italian restaurant guy isn't necessarily any of his roles that I can think of.
No.
Like taxi
can't
driver,
either, but-
I don't know. He turned it down.
But yeah.
But what's interesting is that I think Danny Aiello, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. I don't know.
I know it's a hard one to say.
I'm just gonna call him Sal.
Call him Sal.
Sal and De Niro actually ended up working together. I think they did work together on Godfather 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know he was in that.
Yeah. So like it was kind of funny because they hung De Niro's picture on the wall and then they ended up knowing each other. I think that was something that Spike Lee said. He's like half of the people on the wall he actually ended up meeting. Sal ended up meeting in life later.
Oh,
and that's kind of
really?
funny. And they ended up like being friends. I think him and De Niro were friends for a while after that. So
So I was going to look into him a little bit more because,
'cause he's been in
okay,
a lot of
I thought
stuff.
this is the case. Yes. Okay, yes. So, yeah, what I know him from is Moonstruck, which we've talked about a million times, and we will watch at some point
Okay.
because we've talked about it so many times. It feels like so many things we've been talking about intersect with that movie in some way. And I remember him playing a really awesome character in that movie. But yeah, I John Travolta's half Italian and half Irish BTW.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Thank
So
you.
you're welcome. Travolta's I think Travolta's an Italian name.
I could see that. That was a dumb thing that I said.
Well, we're just going to do recollection correction corner a little bit early. That's all. It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. You can't know everything. We
that's
can't
true.
know everything.
Well,
Yeah.
I was just like, when I saw that, I'm like, oh, that actually makes more sense that Bugging Out would be upset because the close-ups that we all get are like very famous Italian Americans. Because like in the beginning, it's just De Niro, Pacino, and Sinatra. And I'm like, oh, okay, obviously. Like,
Yeah.
I would be surprised if I went in an Italian restaurant in New York and I didn't see those three guys on the wall.
Yeah.
But then I saw Travolta, and I'm like, who's putting Travolta on the Italian American Hall of Fame? This is in '89.
Yep.
This is before Pulp Fiction, and this is I'm like, who's putting him on the Hall of Fame at this point in his career? This is
Right.
before the Renaissance and before
right.
the second downfall.
That's right.
Where now he's like in
Yes.
dime store trash.
I know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I kept going back and forth on that. I think it's an interesting, that part I thought was interesting because I was trying to figure out like, what's his take on this? How does Spike Lee feel about this situation? You know, like, is he thinking, yes, that representation is important in this restaurant? Or is he like making fun of this character for like, or of people? Like, are we focusing on the wrong things?
Yeah.
And I feel like you kind of get that a little bit with Mookie's sister, where she's like, you know,
Yeah.
let's like, yeah, there are more important things. Like, let's talk about the important things. This
Right.
isn't worth having. And then unfortunately that ends up being the thing, which
Yeah.
is just heartbreaking because it's nothing,
It is.
you know?
Yeah, that's the thing that's really kind of sad about that ending and what makes that ending so special, where it's just like all of the dominoes have been put up and like we see it coming, but right before that like confrontation happens, it actually seems like, oh, this is like good. Like things are turning around in an interesting way. And that Sal's like, it's so great to have family work together. I'm going to name it Sal and Sons, and Mookie, you're always going to have a place here, even though you're the worst delivery driver ever. Who goes home and takes a 45-minute shower, chills out with your girlfriend, you know,
That's right.
doing all the not working, but you'll always have a place here. And man, if we just want to talk about that scene, the powder keg explodes. I think that there's a lot of like subtlety going on here in that it's so fast, where I think you almost need to watch it at like half speed to see how everyone's reacting, because it's like every shot is like half a second long and then it's like cut to different characters all over the place. And I mean, it's perfect in that it shows like how chaotic and everything is in that moment. But it's like, what's interesting is that you have those 4 young kids that come in after the place is closed. They're just like there. And when that confrontation happens, they're initially on Sal's side, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, they're black. Wouldn't they also like, hey, I want to stand with bugging out? Like, he's right. There aren't any black people on the wall. Radio Raheem shouldn't have been told to keep his music down, and Smiley should have been treated better by the racist Italian son. But they're on Sal's side until, do you remember the turning point? He says
don't.
the N-word.
Oh, well, that'll do it. Like that.
That does it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were pretty liberal with that, and that family was pretty liberal with that, which was
Well, Sal wasn't.
hard to hear.
And that's something.
So was it just?
It was just
Pino?
Pino. Pino said it a lot, which I thought was interesting. A side note before we dig a little bit more is that John Turturro was very uncomfortable saying it, mainly because he still rode the subway. That's something that Spike Lee said. He was like, he was worried because he was a relatively unknown actor and he was playing this like super racist part. And if you've ever seen anything with John Turturro, the sweetest guy. He's like so calm and centered. He just seems like this really wonderful person. And so he was worried, and that he's like, I'm going to get like beat up from the things that I'm saying in this movie. And I'm not like that at all. But he did it, and he was a complete professional. But Danny Aiello, Sal was also very uncomfortable saying it, which I think is so funny because famously, Leonardo DiCaprio also had trouble saying that word on Django Unchained, and Sam Jackson had to be like, it's just a word. Say the script so that we can go home. Like that's like Sam Jackson's thing. And I think that's interesting that he was a part of this production that had a similar thing, and that these 2 white actors really didn't want to say that word. But I mean, I think you kind of need, like, that's the whole turning point for that scene, is that he calls them N-words. I don't remember the exact context or what the sentence is, but immediately after that, then it cuts back to the kids for like half a second, and they're like, oh, we're N-words now? And then it cuts away. And so it's like, that's the moment.
That is.
That's the moment when things get ugly, and that's the moment when Sal completely turns his back on the community. He says all these nice platitudes. He says, Mookie, you're always going to have a place here. You guys are all just a bunch of N-words. And it's ugly, and and then there's that moment of silence. It's so loud. Everyone's screaming at each other, and then when he breaks that boombox, there's just a long moment of silence, and that's like so stressful because it's like, what's going to happen? Who's going to be the one to break that silence? And it's ultimately Radio Raheem. And another interesting thing that they were going to do, but then that I think Danny said no, was that Radio Raheem was going to grab him and stick him on the counter and then like drag him down the counter. And Danny said, no, I'm not doing that. I don't know if there was a specific reason.
Well, they still threw him over the
They
counter.
still throw him over, but they were going to
Yeah.
be like more like swing him down the counter, knock everything off. I don't know if he was worried about hurting himself or whatever. But he's like, no, just throw me over the counter. It's fine. Like,
Well, and that feels like almost campy. If you
Yeah.
had done that,
Yeah.
I feel like you see that in a million comedies where they're beating, there's a bar fight. Oh yeah, we're going to take the guy and it's going to be hilarious. We're going to run him down. Maybe that felt a little too light or
yeah.
making light of the situation. Here's something I just thought of as you were talking is we've talked about the fact that Radio Raheem has very few lines in this movie, that boombox and those lyrics playing on that boombox was really his voice. And when Sal breaks that apart, that he has like silenced him and that he loses his ability to, I kind of think of it that way just because he didn't say very much, that like that was his way of communicating with the world. And what you've just done is torn it to shreds. And so, of course he's going to be angry about that. And not just because of the symbolism of it, but also like the actual physical act of it is disrespectful and demeaning and, all of the things.
well, not
But I
only
kind of wonder about that, like that's his voice.
it's not only his voice, it's his weapon. Where it's like, that's how he fights. That's how he fights the power. There's that scene where he has the stereo duel with the Puerto Ricans, where it's like it's rap music versus salsa. Which that's another one taker, which I didn't notice until this time, where it's like there's a lot of like spinning, where it's like that shot starts and it's on the Puerto Ricans on the stoop, and then it like swivels down to the boombox, and then it swivels all the way around, and Radio Raheem is standing there with his boombox, and then that whole scene is just on a rotating thing as they're panning around to all these different characters. But that goes to show that, like, yes, he was taking away his communication, but it's also kind of declawing him. And so he kind of feels like disenfranchised in this moment. And that he's like, I have no way to defend myself. The only option I have is violence. And I think that's really powerful too. That kind of, and that Radio Raheem is acting like very similar to how everyone else was reacting to his death before it happened. And that he kind of felt powerless in that moment, and turned to violence as his only option. And that's kind of what happens at the end with that riot. Man, yeah. I feel like we could talk about this, just the end of it forever.
Forever. And again, I just can't help but be struck by the similarities between this and George Floyd, just because it is more recent history, but also like they're chanting the name of someone from a previous one.
Yeah, I was going to do research that.
I never got to that.
Yeah, I forgot. I was going to do it right before, but whoops. But that was that specific one that they're chanting. I think Spike Lee said that he chose that as a direct inspiration, because that one happened outside of an Italian restaurant.
Oh,
So it was like
wow.
very particular in that, like, this is the one that I want to reference. And he might have actually had that case in mind before actually like setting down to write the movie, which he only wrote in 2 weeks, which I think is nuts.
Oh my gosh, wow.
And
That is nuts. That's genius right there.
the Criterion release comes with this little book where it just says
Oh, wow.
do the
Oh my
right
gosh.
thing.
That looks kind of thick.
Oh, it is.
Oh.
It has like a little intro from
Oh
someone
my goodness, that's so cool.
who goes through that. But the meat of this is a journal that Spike Lee kept, a production journal that goes from the very first day that he started writing up until I think when the movie came out. Or no, looks like it goes until about halfway through shooting. So, and this is another crazy thing. He started writing this thing on Christmas 1987. Don't know why. That feels like a weird day to get started on a movie, but that's what he did. So it goes from Christmas 1987 through August 17th of 88. So
Okay.
there's like a whole year of details here. And I read the first day, which I thought was interesting. I didn't see anything that like pertained to that specific case, but there's like 90 pages of this journal and I didn't read through it all.
Oh man. Well,
But
you need to do that.
I probably will because I was
That's
really
interesting.
interested
Mm-hmm.
to see like on this first day, his like first his first paragraph is really interesting. If you don't mind, I'll just read a little
No,
excerpt
go
of
for it.
So yeah, December 25th, 1987. It's 9 in the morning and I'm sitting down to get started on my next project, Do the Right Thing. He knew the title from that. I hope to start shooting next August, so in 8 months. I want the film to take place over the course of one day, the hottest day of the year in Brooklyn, New York. This film has to look hot too. The audience should feel like it's suffocating, like in the heat of the night. I'll have to kick butt to pull things together by August. If I'm not happy with the script, I'll hold off until the following summer. It's better to go at it right away, though, like Oliver Stone did by following Platoon with Wall Street. So, like, immediately he's referencing all of these other things that he's drawing inspiration from. But, here's an interesting little snippet. It's been my observation that when the temperature rises beyond a certain point, people lose it. Little incidents can spark major conflicts. Bump into someone on the street and you're liable to get shot. A petty argument between husband and wife can launch a divorce proceeding. The heat makes everything explosive, including the racial climate of the city. Racial tensions in the city are high as it is, but when the weather is hot, forget about it. This might be the core of a vicious climax for the film.
Wow. I think that's true. Boy, did he make you feel that at the beginning of that movie.
Oh, yeah. Like, I think
Where
that's
you-
the mayor's first words. Is like, damn, it's hot.
Yep.
He's waking up in that like
Yep.
old shack.
Yeah. It was numerous characters actually said the words. But yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's true. Summer
Yeah.
is always people are out, but especially when it's hot, you just get grumpy.
Yeah.
You have no patience. It's like when you go to the Iowa State Fair in August
Oh, yeah.
and it's just hot and everybody's crowded together and you
the
can't get
worst.
any relief and you're just grumpy.
Yeah.
You could feel that. I thought it was interesting. The other thing that I had thought about is at the beginning where they're all playing in the fire hydrant.
Yeah.
It's so hot, and everybody's having a great time and everything. And then later with the hoses, with the fire department later, I was like, oh yeah, that's an interesting
I
little
didn't even
juxtaposition.
notice that parallel. Yeah.
The Rodney King incident happened on April 29th of 1992. So Rodney King had not happened yet. And do you know much about that?
I know a little bit. I don't think I know too
I know
much
it's
about
before you were born. It was out in LA. It was a traffic stop, and the cops beat the crap out of this guy, like almost to death. And there were riots that ensued. And that was kind of my first experience with police brutality. Also with like LA was on fire.
Yeah.
And so the idea that this was written before then The thing of it is, that's Rodney King got on after because he did eventually recover, but I think he was affected by his injuries for the rest of his life.
Sure.
But I remember him doing his press conference, and he got on and he said, "Can't we all just get along?" I don't know if you've ever
Oh,
heard
that's from
that.
that, huh?
That's from Rodney King. He had gotten on the news and done a press conference and said, we all just get along?" He kept repeating that.
Mm.
So the idea that this movie came out before then, but here's the other part that's kind of makes me feel terrible, makes me feel terrible, is the fact that, you know, that Rodney King is my first experience with police brutality and understanding that obviously this has been going on for a long time and
Yeah.
I was not aware of it. Now, I'm not saying that it's because I didn't do the work or whatever. Like, this is a different time. We didn't have the internet. We were dependent on whatever the news was showing us,
Or whatever you're
whatever they
taught
were
in
reporting
schools.
on, right? Or your own personal experience. Like, so time was different. It was definitely a different time. It was much harder to educate yourself on some of this stuff.
Sure.
But the idea that we're watching this movie from 1989 before Rodney King, and at the end of the movie in the credits, there is a list of
Yeah.
people
Yep.
who've been killed by police, and I have never heard any of those names. Like, to me, that just, I'd never thought about police brutality before Rodney King. I just never had. And it helped put in context then what we saw as a result of what happened with Rodney King. This wasn't a one-off.
No.
As a white community, I would imagine a lot of us were like, well, this was just one situation. Not to minimize the one situation, but like, you think if you had no history or context with the interactions with police and the Black community, and all I'm seeing as a young person who's 18 years old or whatever, I guess at that time it would have been 20, is this guy got pulled over, they pulled him out of the car, and they had video footage of these cops like beating the crap out of him. And then I see the city burning. And I'm like, wow. I don't know that this was my thought process at the time, but I could imagine that the conversation was, well, this feels like a big reaction for one situation.
Sure.
What we probably didn't have the context for was, this isn't one situation.
Mm-mm.
This is something that's been happening forever, and we just didn't know about it, or I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And so you're not looking at the situation being fully informed of what's the history here. Like, of course, we knew about Jim Crow, we knew about segregation, we knew about the civil rights movement, we knew about those big things. But I had no idea that the police were killing people. I just had no idea. And I feel like it wasn't until George Floyd, well, and a little bit before, like we had Trayvon Martin, we had a few
Yeah.
other cases that were really brought to the forefront because they stood out from the others because, they were 12-year-olds,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I do feel like we were starting to learn about that then. I would say like the white community in general was like starting to become more familiar with it.
Yeah.
But George Floyd exposed a lot of people to that reality that had just zero idea that that's what was happening.
Oh yeah.
So we go to a church that's very diverse, and I think this has also been like, I have learned, and I have, really tried to educate myself on some things, but having people in my life, getting out of my white bubble and having people in my life that have different experiences than me has like really changed me. And a lot of, I feel like I see the world in a different way because they have been gracious enough to share with me their experiences. But I remember one of the first Sundays we were at our church, and it was 2020. Yeah. It was during COVID. We had just switched over to this new church, and the pastor at our church that was speaking that week was a Black pastor. And he grabbed someone from the audience that I happen to know personally outside of a church context. He's a motivational speaker. He's very well known in the Des Moines area, and he had 2 white teenage sons. And this gentleman was also white. And so the pastor pulled him up and said, hey, your experience with the police and my experience with the police is really different. And your son, if your sweet son got pulled over for speeding, they would just be like, oh, you can just go. It's fine, whatever. He's not afraid. But he said, my son is afraid.
Yeah.
And for me to be in that context with a room full of, this room of diverse, full of like people from every race. And then this Black pastor getting up, someone who's like in a position of authority, someone who is trusted, that I really trust what he says. And I know that it's true. And he's up in front of this group of people and he doesn't know how that's going to be received.
Oh, sure.
To say something like that in the middle of that time, which was, a very tumultuous time anyway, to get up and just state that fact, like your experience with the police and my experience with the police are very different. And this is the reality, that was the very beginning of my, like, not the very beginning, but it was an example in a time of, just a lot of weird things happening between racial groups and stuff, to have somebody say, no, this is true. This is really happening. This isn't just something that you see on TV. This is my experience, and I live in your city, and that's my experience. And this weekend, I worked with one of my friends who, and these are kind of tangents, but I don't know, I just really appreciate the people that are in my life. And he was talking to me, and he always does these really lovely social media posts every week that are always really positive and just about hope and perseverance. And like, he's just is a very positive person. He is also a Black man. And I was talking with him on Sunday, and he, I can't remember what brought it up, but he was talking about the fact that he's being erased, that Black people are being erased from our culture right now, from our country, from our history. And that this man that I know to be a pretty positive person, and who that's what he puts on his social media, is like, yeah, something's boiling in me. Like, I can't stand to sit and watch my people be erased from history. He said, it feels like we fought so hard for so long to make it to where we did. And now it feels like we've gone back 50 years. And he said, I'm going to be posting some things. And he's like, I'm reading a lot of Black history right now. I'm really like steeping myself in our experience and in our history. And I'm going to be posting some stuff, and people aren't going to be happy about it. And I'm like, you know what? I mean, I can't imagine what that feels like. As a white person, I can think and I can try to put myself in that place, but I can't.
Yeah.
I can't fully understand what that feels like to be erased, but that truly is their experience right now. And any sort of anger that, that we see come out of minority groups right now is completely understandable.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I don't know how you live in a country where you're being erased and you just are okay with that. So I feel like watching this movie right now was very powerful, but also like watching it in the context that we're living in. And just knowing the people, like hearing stories from people's actual faces that I'm talking to, people I know who are telling me how devastating this time is right now and how hopeless they feel and how angry they feel. And I just can't help but say, of course, and it is infuriating, and trying to find ways that I can be supportive in some way. I don't even know. Sometimes it's hard to even know what you can do.
Right.
You feel like there's not much you can do. But I think movies like this, things that bring these issues to the forefront for people who don't want to sit down and read a book.
Right.
You can watch it. You can feel the feelings. You can see it. You can see that we are all just people, and we all feel. I don't know. I just found it very, very powerful today to watch it. I'm glad that you chose it. I thought it was really good. One other thing I did want to say was listen to an interview with Percival Everett, which we talked a little bit about because he was the one that wrote American Fiction.
Yeah.
And he did an interview with a guy from a podcast called Talk Easy. And what I've discovered is that Percival Everett well, I already knew this. He's a genius, but he's not really a people person, and he can be a little prickly.
Sure.
He has no, like, he doesn't like silly. He doesn't want anything. He's a very serious person. He's just brilliant. But he was talking about, specifically talking about the N word and how he's like, they want to erase it from, he feels like it's a word, which is kind of what you're talking about. Like, we shouldn't give it more power than it has.
Yeah.
But even so, like, I hear what you're saying, but all, and I don't want to discount his experience. He's a black man. He can have his opinion. I'm not going to say that one way or the other.
Sure.
But his perspective was more like, we should not, people shouldn't have to say the N word. But I don't know. I don't. He's not. I don't know that that's a majority opinion. I don't know if it is or not. But he was very much like, language is important, and we need to not
Sure.
take the sting out of the word. But obviously, there's a history with white people using that word that we probably shouldn't be stepping into. So it's a hard
Right.
thing to do. It's like, oh, I don't know.
Yes.
I just, you know.
I mean, on that conversation, I think the best argument I've heard is from Kendrick Lamar on the song "I" on "To Pimp a Butterfly." That song, it's his favorite song that he's made, and it's a declaration of, like, because that whole album is about survivor's guilt and getting out of these like really rough neighborhoods, and now that he's found success, he feels like he's an imposter. He shouldn't be living in a nicer place in Compton when he came from the streets and stuff. And he's still friends with all those people, but it's obviously just a completely different situation now. But at the end of that song, he like kind of does a reaction, because Oprah Winfrey is famously against everybody saying the N-word. Doesn't matter. She just thinks that it's a word that should not be said.
Okay.
And he relates it to the Nigerian word for king, Negus, which is Negus. And he says, this is a word that was used by white people, that was twisted by white people to be something negative. When I use it like king, like it's only a positive
Oh, yeah.
take on it. I'm using the original like meaning of that Nigerian word, and yes, he's using it in the way that the like white people twisted it. He isn't calling people Neguses or something. He is still using the N word, but to him, he says it's the same as saying like my friend or my brother or something, and only ever being like an uplifting word. And I'm like, that's really nuanced and special. And
Yeah.
like this, like you said, not really my lane to be talking about who can
Yeah.
or can't say it or whatever. But I really like that perspective, in that like taking it way back, like the origins of that word, and saying, you know what, we need to take it back. And I think that's what's so powerful about both everything Kendrick does and also everything that Spike Lee does, is that he's taking the power back from these like white, like you said, there weren't a lot of black directors. And like he's kind of like a big breakthrough artist, and he's not willing to stand idly by while all of these terrible things are affecting his community. And even now, I think he's still very involved. I know he teaches classes at NYU that like are specifically like geared, or not geared, but I think they might have like lower tuition or something, so that people from the community that he grew up in are like kind of incentivized to go, hey, why don't you go check
Nice.
out Spike's class? It's like pretty cheap, and it's at NYU, the super prestigious university. Like he's still out here like fighting for what's right. He's trying to do the right thing. And I think that's so special in this day and age where it feels like we're powerless, like we can't really do anything. And we're like directionless. And I think that's why this movie is so special.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's the best movie ever made. I think it is.
Wow.
I can't think of a better movie. It's not my favorite movie, but I think it is the
Yeah.
best.
It is special. I 100% agree. I would like to see it again.
Yeah.
I would like to see it again, having seen the whole thing. I say this every week, but I feel like there's I don't know. There's just so much wisdom to be gleaned from it. I appreciated the multiple perspectives and things. Like he wasn't just making a blanket statement and everyone agreed. Like everyone had different approaches. Everyone had different feelings. Everybody, dealt with things in their own way, saw situations in different ways. There was a lot of nuance to it.
Mhm.
And it was, I mean, cinematography was beautiful. Casting was amazing. The people that he got in this movie, I mean, it was just one amazing thing after another.
Mhm.
So one of the things I wanted to can we talk about opening credits real quick?
Oh, yeah. Let's talk
Okay.
about it. Rosie Perez.
Rosie Perez. Oh my goodness. So Rosie Perez, she was huge. This was like introducing.
Yeah, this was her
Rosie
first
Perez.
movie. I think the story is that Spike Lee met Rosie Perez at a birthday party, and she was just basically like, "I dance. Like, want to put me in one of your movies?" And he was like, "Yeah, why not?" And I think that those opening credits were like inspired. I think it's the opening of Bye Bye Birdie.
Oh,
He specifically drew reference from because he loves these old Hollywood musicals, which I think is so
yeah.
funny because that does not seem like the type of movies that Spike Lee would like, but
No,
he
very
loves
different
them.
than what he makes.
Yeah. And so it was basically, I think that those opening credits, originally it was going to be rear screen projection and they were going to be
Okay.
showing different footage. I don't know if that idea was fully fleshed out. It was just like, it was going to change and kind of like show this like history of stuff going on. But that idea was eventually scrapped because they didn't have enough money. So they just made a couple of sets. And it's like very clearly a stage. Like you can tell that like maybe this aspect of it, they didn't put like a whole bunch of money in. It's just like it's the full Fight the Power song and Rosie Perez is dancing. And then like they have like some lights on the set and that's pretty much it.
Her dancing too. Some of it was so cringy. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
so bad.
I mean, it hasn't aged some of the dancing hasn't aged super well, but it is so
No.
stylistic and fun. And like the
Yeah.
energy of it, where she is like rocking out to that Public Enemy song.
Oh, she's got like
Oh, she's got the
face
faces.
is all.
Yeah.
Yes, I love her. I think she was in White Men Can't Jump too with Wesley
Okay.
Snipes and Woody Harrelson. But yeah, it was so long until we saw her. I'm like, what was the story with that? Why did they? I mean, it was an interesting choice to have her
Mhm.
because she wasn't that big a part of the movie. Now she was nominated for awards because of this movie.
Oh,
Her performance was nominated for things. Do
interesting.
you know that opening credits with Bye Bye Birdie is Anne Margaret?
I think I did read that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Those opening credits was her dancing. So that's really funny. Harkening back to last week.
Yeah, there's
Yes.
so many connections.
I thought that was really interesting. And it felt like those credits went on for a really long time
Oh,
too.
yeah.
There was,
Well, you
let
got
me
to
see.
play the whole Public Enemy song.
You have to play the whole thing. That's
Yeah.
a long song.
It is a long song.
So let me just tell you the awards real quick while we're standing here. Okay, so Academy Awards. This movie was nominated for Danny Aiello. Sal was nominated for Best Actor in a Supporting Role. And Spike Lee was nominated for Best Writing in a Screenplay.
Sure.
Neither of them won. Golden Globes, they were nominated for 4.
Okay.
No one won, but Best Picture, Best Director, which was Spike Lee, Best Performance by an Actor in a Supporting Role, which was Sal, and Best Screenplay, which was Spike Lee.
Interesting.
The NAACP Image Awards. Okay, so we had Ossie won for Best Supporting Actor in a Motion Picture, which he deserved. He was amazing. And Ruby Dee won for Best Outstanding Lead Actress in a Motion Picture. So that's interesting. It also nominated as these weren't wins, but nominated for Best or Outstanding Motion Picture, Outstanding Lead Actor in a Motion Picture for Spike Lee.
Oh, hey.
Uh-huh.
go.
An outstanding sporting actress in a motion picture for Rosie Perez.
Sure. That's
There you
cool.
go.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of awards, I don't know
Yeah.
if you saw this. This is like the first thing on IMDb trivia, and I think it's kind of
Okay.
interesting. During the 1990 Oscar ceremony, while announcing the Best Picture nominees, Kim Basinger caused some controversy when she ignored her scripted text and said, "We've got 5 great films here, and they're great for one reason, because they tell the truth. But there is one film missing from this list that deserves to be on it, because ironically, it might tell the biggest truth of all, and that's Do the Right Thing."
Whoa.
Yeah.
Kim Basinger, look at you doing the thing.
The trivia
Wow.
ends with Spike Lee would later thank her for it in a 2019 episode of the podcast Unspooled. I think
Wow.
that's so cool.
That is cool. Do you know who she is?
Maybe if I saw her face.
Batman. The original Batman with Michael.
Oh, okay. She's
Keaton?
Catwoman.
No, she's Vicky Vale. Or not Vicky Vale.
Yes, Vicky Vale.
Vicky Vale? Yes, Vicky Vale. Long, blonde,
Oh,
beautiful
okay.
hair. She was in LA Confidential too with Kevin
Oh,
Spacey.
yeah.
She's stunning. And she is Alec Baldwin's ex-wife.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember that whole thing where Alec Baldwin left a voicemail for his daughter? And I don't remember what he called her. He was calling her names on this voicemail. That's
Yeah.
her daughter with him.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
I
she's
do
stunning.
remember that.
Absolutely stunning. Wow. Well, good for her. Way to go.
Yeah, that's like
Wow.
that's a statement on live on the Oscars saying that.
Yeah, and like ad-libbing it.
And
I'm sure they weren't happy about that.
oh no, I doubt it. And that's
Yeah.
crazy that she was just like, all these nominees are great, but Do the Right Thing deserves to
Wow.
win. That's so crazy.
That's amazing. Yeah. Okay, so here's something that I noticed at the beginning of the credits. So before it opens with a saxophone. Do you know this part?
Well,
So-
yeah, go on.
Yeah, so it opens with a soul saxophone playing. And I recognized the tune right away. It was the Black National Anthem, which is Lift Every Voice and Sing. That was played on the saxophone at the beginning before Rosie comes out and starts dancing. So I was like, okay, first of all, I'm going to give you the history of it because I found it incredibly fascinating. I always go to the MLK and Juneteenth celebrations in that our church does. The church that we go to, MLK spoke at in the 60s. And so a lot of times those celebrations are done in our church building. And then we always do a Juneteenth celebration. And they always open those services or those presentations with the Black National Anthem, which I never knew. I didn't know there was one. I didn't know the song until I started doing that, until I started going to those. And I learned it as I was attending these events. So I recognized it, which I was like, wow, I'm glad that has like so much, it has made enough impact that I would recognize it on a saxophone without hearing any lyrics. Like to me, that was very exciting. I was like, oh, look at me. I recognize the Black National Anthem. So anyway, I'm going to tell you the history of it because it is very interesting and it has caused quite a bit of controversy as we know. But it was a poem that was written in 1900 by a gentleman named James Johnson. And he wrote it about the struggles and perseverance of Black communities and individuals following Reconstruction. So, written in 1900, he was a lawyer, an author, an NAACP leader, and a principal of a school.
Wow.
I know. His brother, John Johnson, wrote the music and put the music with the poem. So it's two brothers who actually wrote it back in 1900. And it was later that year, the school that James was the principal at was called Stanton School. It was a segregated school. And a choir of 500 kids performed the song for the first time in public in Jacksonville, Florida to commemorate President Lincoln's birthday.
Okay.
And so that is the origin of the song, which I think is really interesting. You've got these two brothers, school kids are singing it. So I'm like, well, how does that, I don't understand the trajectory, like how that moves on. So I found a Time magazine article that was giving the history of the song. in 2000 because they were using it as a protest song around the George Floyd stuff.
Sure.
So it's kind of having a resurgence at that time. And so Johnson, the author, the poet part, the guy who wrote the lyrics, wrote, and this is a quote: "The school children of Jacksonville kept singing it. They went off to other schools and sang it. They became teachers and taught it to other children. Within 20 years, it was being sung all over the South and in some other parts of the country." So it was very much like a grassroots sort of thing. I had also read that their community had a fire, and those brothers lost their home in the fire.
Oh.
And ended up moving to New York. So they weren't even still there. And it kind of made me wonder if there was some sort of like, if this fire, I don't know the circumstances of it, if it like covered a chunk of their community or not. But you could have a situation where kids are moving away
Yeah.
because of a fire. And so it's kind of spreading that song, right?
Could be, yeah.
Which is so cool. And in 1919, the NAACP adopted it as the Black National Anthem. So it had 20 years of being sung and passed from person to person and through a generation of people. Eventually became adopted as the Black National Anthem by the NAACP. And the next year in 1920, James Johnson was the first executive secretary of the NAACP.
Interesting. Well, that's cool.
Yes. Yes, I thought it was very interesting too, the history of that song. So anyway, yeah, so it is, I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition to have. I don't know if you've ever read the lyrics of that song before. They're very powerful. And having that song next to NWA, it's like that one ends. And you're not hearing the lyrics, you're hearing the melody, and then it goes right into, or not the NWA, the
Public Enemy.
the Fight the Power, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was very, very interesting, and I thought the history of that song was very interesting. I liked that it was grassroots.
Yeah.
I liked that he just very simply played it at the beginning, and then and I feel like they said that it was sung a lot during the civil rights movement. When they were marching, they would sing that song.
Sure.
And then again with George Floyd, it kind of brought it to the forefront again, and people were becoming aware of it who'd maybe never heard it before. And then, of course, super controversial as, they're opening the Super Bowl and people are having a cow about it. And it's an amazing song with an amazing history. And, it is understandable. I think it's wonderful that the NFL does that. I mean, frankly, I'm shocked that any, large sports organization would do it, to be honest. And especially since they've gotten pushback, but this year they did it again. So, and I think they started that. I don't remember when the annual tradition of that started, but it hasn't been all that long. So anyway, I think that's cool.
Interesting. Yeah. I wonder, and I don't want to praise Jay-Z, but I know Jay-Z is involved in like that. Well, he's more involved in the halftime show. If it's more like before the game, I don't think that would really apply. But Jay-Z was also involved in Diddy parties, so I don't want to say anything nice about that guy.
Boy, yeah, that's not good. So here's the other part that is complicated: is like you have the NFL organization that they do this, they perform this at in front of the Super Bowl, but they also had the whole situation with Colin Kaepernick and never made that right.
It's performative. It's a whole It's a whole, hey, I know we look bad for kicking Colin Kaepernick out of the league. Let's patch it up with this very small gesture that doesn't change any systematic things.
No, except I do think that you have a lot of people who boycott for that reason. Like, I very specifically remember having conversations with people from my previous life who were like, yeah, I'm not watching the NFL anymore because they're doing the Black National Anthem. So I'm boycotting the NFL. So I think it can go
I don't know if the
disgusting,
NFL cares.
But what's that?
I don't know if the NFL necessarily cares. They still get like the most viewership of any live TV. I don't know if a
They do.
few weirdo right-wing Christians are going to really tank their numbers that much.
Right. Right. I do think, though, I do appreciate that they do it. I
Oh
think,
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
like, I
nice.
can look at it and be like, well, their motives may not be great, but, it's exposing people to history, and the lyrics are so powerful. And I just feel like,
Yeah,
regardless of their motive, there can be a good outcome in it, and that more people are exposed to it
sure.
and are able to hear it and understand the history of the Black experience. It'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. We have this woman at our church that has the voice of an angel, and she's usually the one that sings it, and it's just so beautiful and
Mm.
lovely. Anyway, I just have very fond feelings about it, just because I don't know.
Wow.
There's something about being in a room of people who know this song. Like, I don't know this song. I'm standing in this room of people and I don't know this song. And they all know it and they're just singing it out. And it's just like, it feels like you're in the middle of something really special.
Sure.
I can't overstate what that feels like. It's really great.
Well, I didn't know that about the beginning of this movie. And that, I mean, that's another point in this movie's favor. That's really cool that it starts
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
And of course, Spike Lee would do something like that. That's
Yes.
a total Spike Lee move. But I think before we wrap up,
Yeah.
we should talk about the actual last thing that is shown in this movie,
Okay.
where it's the two quotes. You have
Yes.
MLK and Malcolm X. And I think, I don't know, like, I don't even know how to necessarily start this conversation because I want to avoid the typical kind of boring kind of conversation about this movie where I think most people, when they talk about this movie, first question up top, why did Mookie throw that trash can? And I'm not super interested in going over something that's been talked to death over and over. But I think, the running theme of this movie and a running motif is that recurring love and hate. I mean, in that journal that Spike Lee wrote, he had Senior Mr. Love Daddy. That was his name, and he had it from day one. He knew that love and hate was going to be kind of a theme of this movie. So it's really interesting to kind of like juxtapose these two really prolific civil rights leaders and their thoughts on using violence. And that MLK was very, anti-violence, of course, and Malcolm X wasn't pro-violence, he was pro-self-defense. And so to have those two quotes run back to back immediately after the big event of the final moments of the movie, and then cutting to that picture of them laughing together, is so beautiful and poignant, and that it's like what Radio Raheem was saying, is that love and hate are in this static. Not that Malcolm X represents hate in any way,
Right.
but it's this like peace over violence, and in those words, it's just so beautiful that these two people could have these very differing views on violence. Of course, I think that Malcolm X quote was taken pretty early in his activism,
Right.
role. He changed views pretty drastically towards the end of his life on using violence. So it's just, I don't know. It's a ending of a movie that makes me speechless every time. Very similar to how the end of Black Klansman is like so, like it's hard to watch the end of Black Klansman. Do you remember what happens at the end of that movie?
I don't remember the end of it. I just remember loving that movie.
It's so good, obviously, but it's the end of that movie, and I guess slight spoilers to Black Klansman, but I think most people have seen that one. Where it's like they foil the KKK's plot, and then there's just the shot where John David Washington is looking out the window, and then there's that cross that's on fire, and it's just like they foiled it, but it's still alive. You know, it's going to be this ongoing fight, but then it cuts to like real rioting, the white pride marches that were going on in Charleston, and the person that like drove their truck through the crowd of people. And
I
then
remember that now.
for like a minute, there's just a freeze frame of like a black and white American flag. And it's like, oh, it's such a gut punch at the end of that movie where it's like the whole narrative of that is like, oh, we're going to beat the KKK. We're having fun. We're prank calling David Duke. And then it's just like, just a reality check at the end of that being like, it's still alive. It's still a thing. It sucks. And this is America. And he just has this knack for doing these epilogues that are so powerful. And I think that this one is maybe his most powerful. I love the end of this movie.
I agree. I know when I was reading about Smiley, where he was talking about what I didn't realize, that it was always that picture. It wasn't multiple pictures of MLK and Malcolm X. It was always that picture. And the idea that throughout the book or throughout the movie, we were talking about love and hate, love and hate, love and hate. And we're seeing these two men who I think sometimes people want to make them more different than they were.
Yeah.
Like they want to be like, oh, this guy was on the good side and this guy was on the bad side. You know what I mean? Like we want to differentiate. That's kind of, I feel like part of what we were taught is like MLK did it the right way. Yeah, right. Yeah. The white community. Yes. That these guys were so different. Their approaches were so different, but really they weren't that different.
No.
And when you're talking about, like, I think most people would say you should be able to defend yourself.
Oh yeah.
And so like the idea that he was just this crazy radical, wanted to kill everyone, like they certainly vilified him. I felt when I was younger learning about the civil rights movement, which we did not learn very much, but what we did, it was always like, well, MLK was on the good side of things and Malcolm X was on the bad side of things. And then you see this photo of them together shaking hands. They're laughing, they're smiling, that there are different approaches to everything. Not everybody's going to do the same thing, but they had the same goal.
Yeah.
And the effects that they had were different, but both powerful. And the same thing when I think about like the guy that founded the Black Panthers, like that's a whole other group, that guy did a play and a movie about. But the ending of it, where I saw the MLK quote, well, first of all, you're reading it, you don't know who said it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So we're starting and I'm reading it. And I'm like, this is interesting. I wonder if this is like where this is from. And then you see MLK. And then when it keeps going and then you're reading the Malcolm X one. And I'm like, what would that have been like if they had flip-flopped it? Like there's something about, would the message be different if it had been that we got the Malcolm X one first, and then it would be like, oh, and then you have the MLK one. And then this time you have there's the MLK one. And then when you have Malcolm X, you have an expectation of what that's going to be. And it's not what you think that's going to be. It's not what we had been taught.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think it's almost interesting and that Malcolm X or the MLK quote, and this is just kind of true of MLK's writing in general, is that he's like almost very biblical. And I'm sure a big part of that comes from him being a reverend. But like, he's like very turned the other cheek, like using a lot of like Jesus imagery in his like speaking and writing, where Malcolm X almost seems like, and I know that he was very Muslim during this part of his life, but he was like almost being like more of like a real person, like trying to be like, yes, what MLK is saying is this like idealized version of how like we rise and do this all peacefully. But
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm X is like, you got to protect yourself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're getting killed out here. Like, you probably should have a gun in case some racist white person tries to kill you. And so it's like that almost like brings it back down to reality. And so it shows that, like, and then that image being like, we can have these two kind of things going, or we can have
Yeah.
this like really hopeful, idealized version of how this like revolution would go. But also, we need to take a look at this realistically and be like, well, we have to look out for ourselves first.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's
I
there's
think
so much to
too,
unpack.
so much, so much. But also to say, like, both of them moved toward each other.
Yeah,
The longer they were in the fight, the more that MLK was kind of moving more toward Malcolm X's perspective, and Malcolm X was moving a little bit more toward MLK's perspective, that they both weren't so set in their ways that they couldn't see the effect of the other. Like,
sure.
obviously they both were effective.
Hmm.
One thing that I have learned a lot is that, these days we kind of deified Malcolm X. He was this infallible
Oh,
person and
MLK.
everyone loved, I'm sorry, MLK. That he was this infallible person and he was wonderful and everyone loved him and everyone has always loved him. But he was hated.
Oh
And
yeah.
so the idea that we pretend that, like our government loved
Oh
MLK
no,
because
no, no.
he was a
They
pacifist,
murdered
or,
him.
yeah. Yes. But that's not the narrative. That was, you know what I mean? Like the narrative was, oh yeah, of course we're going to have MLK Day
Right.
because, everybody's always loved MLK, but that is just plain
No,
old
they thought he was a
not the case.
communist.
Yeah. And I mean, anytime you have someone who is able to influence and mobilize people, and not even because he wasn't solely responsible for that. Obviously, there's a team of people
Mm,
that he was the mouthpiece for that
yeah,
group for sure,
figurehead.
the figurehead. Um, and not to say that not to discount his contribution, because for sure,
Yeah, yeah.
but there was a whole group of people behind him that was helping to organize and strategize and all
Hmm.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The idea that we think that, we've always been very supportive of him is kind of a joke, because that is just not how it was.
No, no, that's definitely the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is like, it's almost like sickening to a point where it's like every big city has an MLK Boulevard, and we
Mm-hmm.
all get MLK Day off in January, and it's just like, this feels so fake, especially knowing
Mm-hmm.
like how he died and how the
Mm.
FBI was like really against him and may or may not have murdered him, and all of the other civil rights
Tapping,
leaders
yeah, wiretapping him and
and
all
Fred
that.
Jones. Yeah, like they everything. Like
Mm-hmm.
the US government, especially its intelligence agency, was like trying to root out and murder all of the civil rights leaders. It
Mm-hmm.
feels so fake now that like I'll see like how like when Joe Biden was president being like, I'm okay, this great leader. I'm like, man, you're working for the guys that murdered him. Like what are you doing, guy? Like this feels so
Yeah.
fake to see American leaders deify MLK.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody's really talking about Malcolm X the same way. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and he's more, not to say that MLK is not complicated as a person, but
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm X definitely has like a more complicated history, and that he
Mm-hmm.
kind of grew up as like a thief, a gangster, and then got roped into the Nation of Islam, which is
Mm-hmm.
horrible. Um, and yeah. Wait, what is that called? It's not called the Nation of Islam. What's the organization he was in?
I thought that was it.
Is it? Okay.
I
Maybe
think so.
I'm getting it crossed, because I think they still exist and they're still shady and evil.
I mean, it's different than just plain old Islam, but I don't
Yeah, yeah.
remember the.
It's like a specific like black
Is that Louis
nationalist group.
Farrakhan? Was he in there?
It's the Honorable Elijah Muhammad
Oh,
or something.
I don't know. I wish I knew more about that. I should probably try to learn more about that.
Maybe
Um,
I think I'm due for a rewatch of Malcolm X. Maybe
yeah, I haven't
in the
seen it for a
future.
while.
maybe we'll do a
Yeah.
rewatch because
I would love to watch it again.
I think we're both due. So,
Yeah, I do too. The thing with MLK Day, while I understand that it's like a token thing, what I do appreciate about it is that it allows not everyone, but some people a day off to celebrate with family and that
Sure.
kind of stuff. And so while I understand that the motives may not be completely altruistic, I think about people in the Black community who could have a day off to like
well,
go
sure.
to celebrations and do the things that they would want to do as a group, as a community. But I don't know. We'll see if they roll that back. They may end up rolling it back. It's okay to be a racist these days, so
Well,
who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it might be incriminating to even post this podcast.
Probably. But you know what?
It's fine.
My senators are getting used to hearing from me on a regular basis. I was so mad the other day. I called and emailed one right after the other. I was saying to somebody like, I called and I have the script in front of me, and then I get in the moment and I'm like, I know I have 2 minutes or something to say what I need to say because it's a voicemail. And I'm like just ranting for 2 minutes and I hang up the phone. And then I'm like, I didn't get to say everything I wanted to say, so I'm gonna send an email too. I know.
We're doing what we
I
can.
just think we need to, yes, like art like what we just saw today is I think in some ways some of the most effective ways to help people understand and empathize with people who are different than them. And so I really
Absolutely.
appreciated it. I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah. If you've somehow gone through this entire podcast where we spoiled everything about this movie and you've not seen Do the Right Thing, do yourself a service and watch it.
Yes.
There's still things that you're going to get out of it. There's still the visceral reaction to seeing these images, even if you know what happens on paper. The way that everything's shot still, it still evokes a lot of emotion.
Well, and there was so much too that we didn't even touch on. Like,
Yeah.
I know it seems like we talked about a lot, but dang,
No.
you could talk for hours on this thing.
We barely talked about the mayor and mother sister's little
loved
relationship.
them.
They're so cute.
I loved them.
I keep saying like this
just
is one of my favorite scenes, but like the scene where he brings her flowers and
Oh,
she
man.
just lets him sit on the stoop and just say a few things and then I gotta go. Well, he tips
he
his
was
hat.
just
He's
such-
so
oh.
cute.
I loved him. I would love to know his backstory.
Well, we
He's
kinda
a character
got
I
that.
would a little bit, yeah.
And I think that like, and not to keep dragging this conversation on,
I know,
but
can't help it.
going back to like the mayor saving that kid,
Mm-hmm.
like right before that, or maybe not right before that, but shortly before that, we got the scene where Ahmad is like is basically bullying the mayor for no really good reason. And he's like, don't say anything to me unless you've stood in the doorway while your 4 kids are starving and you can't do a damn thing about it. And it's like, there's something to be said to where like he seems to have this like relationship with younger people in the neighborhood, and not in like a creepy way, but he's like kind of taking on this paternal role. I mean, he calls himself the mayor. He sees himself as some sort of community leader, although he's definitely unorthodox about it. And he's a self-admitted drunken fool. But he does seem to really care about the kids and all of the young people in the community. And I wonder if that's like a more direct reference to we never see his wife, we never see any of his kids. Like something happened, and well, something happened, and now he like essentially drowns his sorrows and his Miller High Life, and he's very particular about the Miller High Life.
Yes, he is. Well, that was the other part with the Sal character, because
Yeah.
that's again very complicated.
Yeah.
He didn't have to do that, and the mayor knew he would show up there, and he's like, pick your weapon. Like, this is obviously something that happens every day.
Yeah.
And so it is not that Sal doesn't care about people there. That's what makes it so complicated.
Yeah.
Is because like you see those moments where he's very compassionate and even like with Smiley where
Yeah.
Mookie doesn't have any money to give him. And obviously Smiley's hitting him up for money every day. Hits everybody up for money to get his pictures every day. And people are still giving him money every day.
I'm
So you're
sure.
seeing a lot of compassion and empathy in the community.
And I'm sure everybody on that block has like 10 of those pictures each and stuff.
Yep.
Like, I don't remember what happens to the one that Mookie buys. I know he picks it up. I don't know if he just throws it in his pocket or
I don't
whatever.
remember.
But
I
yeah,
don't remember.
even after Pino yells at Smiley, Sal comes out and buys one for him. So like, yeah, there are these moments of
Yeah, it's like
he's
I just don't get it.
he's a
He was
puzzle.
that was just so difficult because there were moments where I was like, I really felt like he really cared, and then that happened,
Yeah.
and was that all just simmering underneath? Was that all fake? Was it? It just comes out at the worst times. Was it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's just very complicated because he really did care, and there was nothing performative about his reaction to the way his son was teaching or treating Smiley. Like that was a
No,
private moment. If he was not really emotionally moved, we wouldn't have seen that sort of reaction from him. So
yeah.
I just find that very very complicated.
It's very complicated. There's a lot of things in this movie that are complicated. I've seen this movie now 4 times, and I don't know if I completely understand all of the dynamics still. There's still things that I'm noticing. Like this most recent one was like the mayor and his backstory and the kids, and I'm like, that's something. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I have that figured out, and I don't know if there's a good answer because they don't talk about it a whole lot. But there's a lot
Except
of
the young people are like, well, I would have gotten a job.
right. Yeah, they're all being
Like
yeah.
kind of being a
They
jerk.
don't
And I'm like,
know.
guys, like this guy is really going through something. He's being vulnerable with you right now, and you're just gonna like jump on him because I don't see you working right now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they're being awfully mean to a guy who's just trying to get by.
Yeah.
And
Well,
well, I would have
yeah.
gone and gotten a job. I'm like, dude, don't be mean.
Yeah, that's the thing that's kind of like interesting about that is after he says that thing about like, my kids were starving, is that it's just Ahmad at that point that is like still going
Yeah.
after the mayor. At that point, like Martin Lawrence and the other one, they're like, hey, stop it, quit it. Like, come on.
Right.
Like,
Right.
and then the girl, I don't know her name, but she was like against it from the beginning. So it's just
Yeah.
like this one guy came in really fiery, really hot. And
Yeah.
that like kind of it's so interesting because Spike Lee couldn't have been over like 25. Like
I don't
he's like
know.
a kid in this movie.
He looks super young.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look him up while you're chatting.
Yeah, I don't know how old he is. But like he has this really insane perspective that you would expect from someone that's way older, especially in that scene where it's like that is a young person's perspective, where it's just like, or maybe not necessarily like an older teenager's perspective, where it's like, oh, come on, just get a job. Like, come on, like
Yeah.
it's your fault because like whatever, like my parents have instilled that in me and that's all I know is that you need to work hard. And so it's if you're failing, it's obviously something that you did wrong.
Yeah.
Where it's like there's so many different things that just kids don't know about.
That's right.
There's so many
It feels very black and white.
yes.
Yes, and
Yes.
it is never that easy. And it also makes me wonder about the history behind mother, sister, and him. She seems very angry at him through some of
Yeah,
that movie, and then it changes. But
it does. And I mean she says something along the lines of that he reminds her of the worst people in her life, her ex-husband and her tenant, I think, because she's a landlord.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was that I don't know. It was great. I'm so glad you picked it. I really, really
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I'm going to be thinking about this for a while. That there are
Yes.
things that are going to come up that are going to make me think about this for a while.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, ugh, like I said, I think it's the best movie. I'm excited. Spike Lee's coming back with a new movie. Well, a new-ish movie. I think it's coming out next year, but he's remaking Akira Kurosawa's High and Low,
Oh,
which I am
okay.
interested in because High and
Hmm.
Low is that's not like an underground Kurosawa movie. It's a very well known. If you're into like, if you're at least somewhat into like movies, more artsy foreign movies, you've probably
Hmm.
seen High and Low. I'm
Hmm.
interested to see his take on it because that movie is very much about class.
Hmm.
Um, and like, I mean, the whole thing is about like a hostage situation where there's like a rich man thinks that his son is kidnapped, and the kidnappers think that it's his son too, but it's actually his son's friend who's his like butler's kid, and his butler can't
Hmm.
afford the ransom. So it's like this like conflict that kind of stems from like the rich guy being like, do I pay the ransom for this? He's not my kid. He's someone
Hmm.
else's kid. Yes, we're friends, but like they're asking for like this astronomical amount of money because they think that it's my kid when in actuality it's not mine. I'm
Hmm.
interested to see what his take is on it. I think Denzel's in it, so it'll probably be pretty good. Anytime Denzel and Spike are together, it's going to be a good movie.
Love Denzel Washington.
But Spike Lee does not have a good track record with remakes. Maybe one of
Hmm.
the worst remakes ever is his remake of Old Boy,
Oh.
which is one of my favorite action movies. It's barely an
Hmm.
action movie, but I loved that movie so much. And for all accounts, he absolutely ruined it. Just
Oh
didn't
no.
understand it. It's like maybe the one major slip up in Spike Lee's discography
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
filmography. So I'm interested to see what he does with High and Low. It's an interesting pick. He's the two movies that he's remade, Old Boy and High and Low, are very high profile. Like those aren't
Hmm.
like underground movies that
Oh,
like nobody
that's
knows about.
risky.
Yeah, Old Boy has maybe the most famous fight scene in any movie, the famous
Hmm.
hallway scene. I've
Hmm.
seen it referenced in two other movies and in a game Sifu, where you get to play a hallway fight scene, and it's very clearly the one from Old Boy. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm interested to
We'll
see what he
see.
does next. I don't think I watched the movie of his that came out after Black Klansman. I think it's Da Five Bloods. I think that
Oh.
was one that I missed.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I should say I'm not super well versed in Spike Lee's filmography. I've only seen Do the Right
Mm-hmm.
Thing, Black Klansman, and Malcolm X, all of which I've given 5 stars. But
Those are the three I've seen too. I'm trying to remember if I saw Jungle Fever. I might have seen Jungle Fever, but if I did, it was way back in the old days.
yeah, I think that came out in '91.
I was in college then. That would make sense.
So maybe you
Yeah.
saw it. I don't know. But yeah, I think that'll just about do it for this episode. We could
Okay.
keep talking for 2 more hours, but we'll cut
We
it off
could.
here.
Yes,
Um, do you have recollection correction?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Um. So we were talking about hot dishes.
Okay, that's what we're talking about.
I'm a grumpy old man. Sorry, I gotta get my glasses on with my headphones. That never goes well. Sorry. One
Uh,
moment,
the,
please.
the, the famous hot dish versus casserole debate.
Yeah, and it did say when I did a little bit of research, they did say that hot dish is very specific to Minnesota.
Yes. Yeah.
But in general, it's a Midwest situation.
Yeah.
Both of them. So it says a casserole is made in ceramic glass or a baking dish. A hot dish is a regional casserole with more structured ingredient lineup. Okay, so casserole can be a mix of any ingredients, including vegetables, protein, starch, sauce, whatever. And it can be a main course, a side dish, a breakfast, or a dessert. So very loosey goosey.
Yeah.
The hot dish is typically a main course, not a side dish.
Mm.
And it often includes a protein, vegetables, a starch like potatoes or a pasta, and a sauce or a binder like a cream of mushroom soup sort of situation.
Sure.
So a hot dish is a specific type of casserole. I think it goes that direction. So you would say a hot
Gotcha.
dish is a casserole, not a casserole is a hot
It's a
dish.
square rectangle.
That's right. That's right.
I will say.
So there you go.
I think, yes, that's probably the technical definition, but everyone here in Minnesota calls every casserole a hot dish. I've never heard anyone say casserole up here. Not that I'm
Really?
talking a lot about, entrees with people, where it's like, what are you making for dinner? I'm having a tuna noodle hot dish. But that's what they would say up here.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, the general consensus seems to be that casseroles are looser with the rules.
I could see that. Because there's like breakfast casseroles and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Okay. So that's that. That's the hot dish casserole situation. We talked about the Dirty South a little bit, and I was not familiar with it. So I did look into that for a second.
Okay.
The Dirty South is like Virginia to Florida
Okay.
and then over to Texas.
Okay. So it's just the Confederacy.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
That it encompasses a lot of Black traditions and artistic expressions that shaped the culture of that area. So when they're talking about Dirty South, that's generally what they're talking about. That there's a style of hip hop called the Dirty South.
That might be where I got that term.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And that there is actually a Spotify channel called Dirty South that has hip hop. So they were saying like compared to West Coast, East Coast,
And then Dirty
and
South.
then the Dirty South.
I can see that. Yeah.
There is a Serbian and Australian DJ and record producer that goes by Dirty South.
Oh. Okay.
There's also an American reality TV series called Party Down South that includes Dirty South references.
Interesting.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I just said that because I think it's. Oh, what? Who says I'm from the Dirty South? It might be Andre. Andre 3K.
Okay.
He might say something like that because he's Atlanta.
Oh, yeah. That'd be down there.
That would be it.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my little elaboration on the Dirty South.
Okay.
Not necessarily a correction, but just additional information should you be interested.
Interesting.
Okay, so this is my turn to pick.
Yeah. What are we
And I
watching
have
next
been-
time?
I've been waffling back and forth between two.
Okay.
And what I'm trying to decide, because what I've really enjoyed doing is taking a character from the movie that we just watched, or an actor from the movie we just watched, and then watching something else with that same actor.
Yeah, that was kind of fun.
I like it. So I'm going to do that again, but I have two movies that Radio Raheem is in that I've seen.
Oh, okay.
And I would love, when I saw him pop up on screen, I was like, oh my gosh, I know that guy.
I know him
It
from
was-
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man?
Yeah,
What do you play in Spider-Man?
he plays one of the guys that works at the Daily Bugle in the Sam
Oh.
Raimi trilogy.
Uh-huh.
He's like the one guy that's nice to Peter Parker. He's Robbie Robertson.
Let
Very
me
nice.
say that the two movies I've seen him in, he was the most wonderful, sweetest character ever.
Oh.
And so it was interesting to see him in this because he was so straight-faced and very serious.
Yeah.
And the two things that I've seen him in, he was like the most delightfully wonderful, sweetest, kindest, most lovely person.
Well, I like that. I like the sound of that.
So these are the two choices that I was thinking through was Sister Act,
Okay.
which could be really fun because Maggie Smith is in it and I like that.
Whoopsie.
And Whoopi. Not Whoopsie,
Goldberg.
Whoopi.
Whoopsie.
Whoopi.
That's what there's a parody. There's
Oh, I'm like,
on,
who calls her Whoopsie?
on Tim and Eric. They have
Okay.
like a bunch of celebrity knockoffs. So there's like Billy Crystals and Whoopsie Goldberg.
Okay.
So I always
Got
call
it.
her
I was like, that's
Whoopsie.
not right. So that's one option. Have you ever seen Sister Act before?
Yes, but
Oh, you
I
have?
was too young. I don't know. I have seen it, but
so
I know
fun.
nothing about it, basically.
It is very fun. I liked it a lot. That one, but I think the one I think I'm going to go with is Regarding Henry.
Okay.
which you may have not have heard of, but it has our friend Harrison Ford in it.
Oh, okay. Harrison Ford
And
and Radio Raheem, huh?
that's right.
All right.
Harrison Ford plays a character who has some sort of brain injury
Hmm.
and has to relearn how to walk and
Oh,
that sort of thing. And Radio Raheem, Bill Dunn is his name, plays his therapist, his physical therapist, and it is delightful.
oh,
It's really
oh.
good.
Well, that sounds really nice.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it since maybe 5 years after it came out. It was one that I really loved, though, and had watched multiple times, but I don't
Oh,
remember much about it. So it's been a while. When did it come out?
okay. Well,
Or what are you looking at?
this is kind of interesting. Came out in 91,
Okay.
but interestingly enough, written by J.J. Abrams
Really?
Hmm.
Now that's interesting.
and directed by Mike Nichols, the same guy who did Working Girl and The
Yes.
Graduate and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Yes, that guy.
And I was saying I wanted to watch more Mike Nichols movies, and there I go.
And there we
I
go.
didn't know that was a Mike Nichols movie. Oh, it has so
Yeah,
much heart. You're gonna love it. Is
I'm
Annette
excited.
Bening in it?
Yeah, yep.
Yep,
Annette
she plays his
Bening,
wife, I believe.
Michael Haley, is the
Okay.
other one. Bruce Altman. I don't know.
Hmm.
Oh, John Leguizamo's in it.
Oh, I like him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't recognize any of the other names, but I'm excited. This will be good.
Yeah. I think you're gonna like it. I just have such a soft spot for old Harrison,
Me
and
too.
especially after watching this last season of Shrinking, I just feel like I've been watching press tour. Recently, I saw a press tour with him, and he's usually so prickly. He can be
Not
prickly.
not anymore. He's really softened up over the last
He's
5
gotten,
years.
yes, I mean, really.
Yeah.
I just watched an interview someone did where they were showing up, and you can tell they're anticipating a little bit of like
Mm,
pushback. And all the press I've seen with him, he has been funny
yes.
and charming. And I'm like, what has happened to Harrison Ford? I like this new Harrison
I do
Ford. I've
too.
always loved him, but I like seeing his sense of humor come through,
Because he's
and
so
he just
funny.
seems happier now. Yeah,
He
I like
does.
it.
Yeah, I think
Um,
I wonder if he was just so sick and tired of being like pinholed as Han Solo.
mhm.
I know that he was so like against like the Star Wars fandom. Like
Mm,
he was just like, I'm not Han Solo. Stop bothering me. I'm not gonna sign your Millennium Falcons. Like so sick of
yeah.
it in the 90s and 2000s. But I think these days he's more like, yeah, it was a part of
hmm
my life, and I'm chill, and I
Yeah,
like that. I like that turn of like self acceptance. It's
I
very
do
nice.
too. I also saw someone say that I don't remember if they were talking to him about it, but there was something to the effect that with those other franchises he was in and the other movies, people just wanted pictures with him. With
Yeah.
Shrinking, he's found that people want to talk with him
Mm.
about his character or things that they've gone through, the ways they resonate with what that TV show is doing
Yeah.
versus just coming and trying to get something from him. In this particular case, they're wanting to share with him like what it's meant to them. And that is different than what he had experienced before.
That's true. Yeah,
And I could see that.
because nobody's gonna talk to Indiana Jones about like,
No,
oh, that movie meant so much to me when you punched that
right.
Nazi and it sounded so awesome. And
That's
you
right.
got your satchel caught on the turret of a tank. That really meant a
And I
lot to
hate
me.
snakes too.
Yeah. I really identify with your character, Mr. Ford.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So people are having deeper conversations. And so those interactions probably feel more meaningful. He doesn't seem like the kind of person that's interested in a lot of surface things
no,
generally. He wants
he's
to make a
like
connection.
he's a serious actor, and I think that's
Hmm.
something that like a lot of people don't necessarily think of because he's in these
Right.
big blockbuster franchises, but
Mm-hmm.
like he's a real act. Like you hear interviews with him talking about his process, and it's just like
Hmm.
he's a professional through and through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
He's one of my
Well, it'll be
favorites.
interesting to see how you like this.
It sounds like it's gonna be a slam dunk, except for J.J.
Yeah.
Abrams, but
Well,
uh,
J.J. Abrams used to be real good. I don't know what happened to him after he hit Star Wars. He kind of.
we don't talk about J.J. Abrams and Star Wars. That's something that we don't address.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because I
But
loved when he did Alias. I thought he was amazing in that. With that,
yeah, I like Cloverfield.
mm-hmm.
I haven't seen the new Star Trek movies.
Mm-mm.
Um, yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. This will be good.
I hope
And
so. I hope there's things to talk about. I don't know. We'll see.
oh, I'm sure
It's
there
not
will
going to be
be.
anything like this. This had a lot to talk about. I don't know
Well,
if
yeah.
that will have as much, but
Hey, we talked for an hour about Working Girl, so I think we'll be fine.
and we talked a long time on Grumpy Old Men too. And who would have
That's
thought there
true.
would have been things to talk about for that long?
Well, that was a delightful film.
It sure was.
But also, before we wrap up, I don't know if we've talked about shrinking on this show. I
Yeah.
do quickly want to give a shout out because you made me watch it.
I did.
Or you didn't make me, but you did incentivize me to.
Yes,
You
I
got
did.
me. It's in the background right there. Oh, it's a little dark, but you can see that my
Oh, your
little-
Lego.
the Lego set that you bought me to. You said if you bought me a Lego set, if I would watch the show so that I could
Yep.
watch something while I make it. And
That's right.
I watched Shrinking season 2. I already saw Shrinking season 1, and I loved it. It was just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'll watch Shrinking season 2 eventually. You gave me the motivation, and I gotta say, it's really g-dang good. Just as a little shout out here at the end, if you have not seen Shrinking, I think you should. You know, it doesn't deal with the race politics that this movie does, but it really, it dives into mental health things and grief and how that can affect relationships and families. It's really, really special. And Harrison Ford is really g-dang good in it. But you know, you could say that about pretty much everything he's in, except for that time that he did a weird voice in Blade Runner. But again, we don't talk about that.
We're not going to talk about that. Yeah, I think that show, much like Ted Lasso, has it depends on what people are going into it. Like people really hated the second season of Ted Lasso. It took a different turn. It dealt a lot with
loved it.
mental illness and mental health. And so of course not everything is funny and laughing all the time. And I think Shrinking is the same. There are some really hard themes in that
Oh, yeah.
show, but it is handled with such heart and humor that even though we're dealing with and talking about some really hard and sad things, and there are definitely some hard and sad moments, that ultimately you feel you don't lose hope in humanity. It allows you to continue to believe the best in people, and that even when we mess up and we mess up a lot, like there's still forgiveness. There's still relationships are complicated. Like there's a lot into that, but I think ultimately the tone is the importance of relationship, redemption, forgiveness, connection. Those are all really important themes, and I love that. That's like the core of the things I care about the most. So
It's a great show. It's a
beautifully
special
done.
show. I'll say.
it really is.
I like it more than Ted Lasso. I think
I think I do too.
It's just really, really great. Cannot recommend it enough.
Well, and did Brett Goldstein write both shows?
I think he did. I know he did writing on both. I don't know if he was like the sole writer,
Yeah.
but I know that he did work on both.
And I think, if I remember correctly, he was not going to play the role that he. Oh, shoot. Now I can't remember.
I think you're right, though. I think that it was like he wrote that character and then he was like, I don't want to play it because it is like, I don't think it's necessarily like he saw himself too much in the character, but it's a heavy role.
It's a heavy role.
And we won't spoil anything because we want people to go out and watch it.
Oh,
But
please watch it. It is so good.
yeah.
So much humor and heart.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the thing. We're talking about it being a very, like, dealing with these very heavy issues. It's a funny show. And it's
Very funny.
It's really, like, the humor in it is really good, too. It isn't, like, corny. Like, it feels really funny. And especially in the second season, you can tell that they were just having a blast. There's moments where you can tell they're improvising. And it's really, like, it gives Harrison Ford a chance to flex that muscle because he is such a funny guy. And he hardly ever gets to do that because he's always playing the charming, suave, like love interest guy. So it's really, really nice to get that angle from him. And his
Yeah.
character is so, so good. So,
Well, you can see real vulnerability in his character, which I feel like we never see Harrison Ford vulnerable ever.
a good
Like he's
point.
always the tough one,
Yeah.
So it's seeing him in a different light. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm just a sucker for relationships and people caring for each other and all of that. But yes, it is very funny. And it's not like a bum funny.
No, yeah.
It's still really funny, like laugh out loud funny.
It's really, yeah. And this is coming from me. I don't really laugh at stuff. I'm like, I have a very specific niche type of humor that I think is funny. And even I'm like, man, this is a really, really funny show.
Yeah, it's good.
My brain hasn't melted that much, but a little bit. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think-
The
I think-
the cast is amazing,
yes.
and so many people that I didn't know before I watched the show, which is possible I just didn't see them. But
Well, there's a lot of like people who are like bit parts in one or two things, and then this is like their big break, and they're
Right.
given. And that's what's so cool about this show is that even the side characters are given opportunities to like express and emote, and they're given like actual scenes to work with. So you're really getting like these first time actors are really getting a really good shot at like breaking through. Kind of similar to, was it Hannah Waddington from
Waddingham, I think is her
Waddingham?
name.
Yeah,
From
where-
Ted Lasso.
where
She was
she-
super famous in England, but we didn't know
Oh,
who she
okay.
was.
But now she's like in Don Julio commercials or whatever.
She's everywhere. Yeah, she's everywhere. The other thing I want to say about Shrinking is, you often watch shows where there's an enemy, there's like a villain character. And in this show, what's interesting is that there isn't really a bad guy in it, but our characters are flawed. And so they make mistakes, and you watch them and you're like, dude, that was dumb.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
why'd you do that? So you don't need a foe because, like, truly, your characters that you love so much make dumb choices, and that's just the reality of life.
Yeah.
And you can watch them walk through the mistakes they make and face them, and that is also very refreshing. Nobody's being crazy over the top. Everybody's doing the best they can. Nobody has the intention of hurting someone,
Yeah.
But sometimes we all do things that are not maybe the best decision in the moment, but it allows for growth. And that's the other thing I like, is that people are examining themselves and they grow through these experiences. And I
Yeah.
find that inspiring as well.
Yeah.
It's great.
Really great show. Just want to plug that here at the end. Yeah, I think that's actually the only thing I'm going to plug today. I'm just going to
Okay.
leave our audience with that. Just watch Shrinking after this. I think that's what we should do.
and then watch Regarding Henry, and we can have just a giant Harrison Ford love fest.
That sounds like a great idea. And then watch Working Girl, and then listen to our podcast where we talk about Harrison Ford on Working Girl.
Yes, please do, because you guys, it was a good movie, and it didn't get very many views. I'm like, guys, this is good. This is Mike Nichols. Go out and listen to it. Plus, Cyndi Lauper's making it into a Broadway musical next year. So
Oh,
you want to get in on it at the beginning.
that's
You
right.
need to listen to us talk about Working Girl.
That's right. But yeah, we have all sorts of other podcast episodes that we have also done. Odds are, not if you like a movie, we've probably covered it. But if you like different kinds of movies, we've probably done one. Except for war and horror, those are off limits.
Yes.
Maybe one day we'll feel ambitious and we'll do Get Out or something. That might be the one that you might be fine with.
I don't know. I've heard the end of that takes a turn, and
The
that's
end
the
of
hard
that
part.
does take a turn, and that's the hard part, but most of it is not. But that's not on the docket anytime soon. I'm just like, if we're going to do any horror movie, it probably would be Get Out.
I would make you watch it, and then I would make you tell me if there's a gross part and what the timestamp is on it, and then I will close my eyes at that part. Because are there jump scares?
No, not really.
Like, do things happen unexpected, or like you can see something bad's coming? As far as gross goes,
Oh, and I mean,
because I know there's a
see.
gross part.
Yeah, you'll see it. It's
I don't know.
not a jump scare of gore.
Oh, I'll see it coming.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm okay then. I can close my eyes.
Again, this isn't coming anytime soon. I'm not planning on doing horror movies.
good.
Unless it's like an artsy A24 one that doesn't have any gore in it and it's more like a conversation about, you know, some other deeper meaning.
Okay.
But again, I don't have any plans to do that.
Have we done any science fiction yet? We haven't really, have we? I don't think so.
No, not really. I love sci-fi. I don't know if you do. So I don't know.
I don't mind sci-fi.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll do one in the future. Because I have a lot of great sci-fi movies. So,
It's just blood and guts that I don't like.
okay. Well, we won't watch Alien then.
No. Seen pictures.
That
Even
mo-
the pictures gross me out.
I think
No.
I think if you were to watch it now, it's like it's 50 years old. Like it doesn't really
But
hold
the
up. The
creature
same way.
itself looks like
Oh, H.R. Giger, yeah,
gross.
it's a great practical suit.
Well, it
Except
looks gross.
sometimes when you see it in full body, and it's just like, oh, that's a guy. That's a guy. But most times they shoot around it where there's interesting angles or lighting, so
Sure.
you don't get to see that. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, next time regarding Henry, and then
Okay.
you'll have to watch that episode to find out what I'm going to pick next. It will probably be a turn because I always do that. It's like we're gonna do this fun '90s movie. Let's do the right thing. This really heady, politically charged episode.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with it.
It's
But
good. It's like people, like I'm a mood reader. I can't read a bunch of heavy thing. I can't read a heavy thing and then another heavy thing. I have to go heavy, light,
sure,
because it gets too heavy. So it's good. I bring the levity. You bring the brain stuff.
I guess so. I guess so. But I also like Ghibli movies and Wes Anderson.
Sure.
So we do those too.
Yeah. That's right.
So that'll do it for this episode. I think that's all I have to say.
Okay. Well, the only thing I have to say is continue to support your local library and call your mom.
Bye bye, everybody.
So long.